Chapter 66. Chen, Dark Demon God. Mutuo thought for a long time before digesting the huge amount of information, and then looked at Rayquaza again. Can you tell me, what kind of person is Chen? The more it knows, the more curious it becomes about the name. And after hearing this, the reminiscence in Rayquaza's eyes became more intense. Instead of answering Mutuo's question directly, he talked about the past and reminiscence. Chen and their past. Powerful and mysterious. This was the first impression it had on Chen. But after getting along gradually, it discovered the other advantages of the latter. Decisive, calm, kind. And what really made it and other divine beasts decide to follow is Chen's attitude towards Pokemon. Unlike other humans of that era, Chen did not just use them as a fighting tool, but a real partner. It is precisely because of this that they will let go of their arrogance as divine beasts and follow them willingly. They got through that long dark turmoil together. They leaned on each other and defeated one strong enemy after another. After the turmoil ended, Chen did not use their power to rule the world and still maintained the original purity. In Rayquaza's narration, Mutuo only felt as if he had returned to countless years ago, seeing with his own eyes a group of mythical beasts led by a human, fighting side by side to end the troubled times. In order to maintain the order he finally established, he founded the ancient Super Pokemon Alliance. It's just that managing the world is a lot of trouble. That's what he told us back then. Later, when the person cultivated gradually matured, he acted as a hands-off shopkeeper and took us to travel around the world, from the end of the earth to the end of the ocean. By the way, he's a nosy man. There was once a destitute human being who was given a trace of the dragon law by him. Once again, he used the power of the law to help 3 poor little guys. Those 3 little guys were very lucky. With the power of his laws, they became the god of fire, god of water, and god of thunder. The legendary Pokemon of the clan. Rayquaza's voice was a little bit dissatisfied, but his eyes were always soft, and he counted the things he had experienced with Chen together, each of which was familiar. And these words like nostalgia, after falling into Mutuo's ears, not only made him feel emotional. From the look on Rayquaza's face, he clearly misses those days. And what makes Mutuo most emotional is Chen's heart. A human who controls the supreme power, but can always maintain his original heart, it is no wonder that he can attract many divine beasts to follow. However, this emotion didn't last long, and it quickly noticed something wrong. 3 downhearted little guys? God of water, god of fire, god of thunder? Mutuo seemed to have thought of something, and immediately looked at Rayquaza with disbelief. The 3 existences you mentioned are the 3 divine bird family in the Legend of Kanto region? Rayquaza, who was still reminiscing, was interrupted, but he was not angry, but nodded indifferently. But Mutuo couldn't keep calm any longer after being confirmed. It did not expect that it was just a reminiscence of the past, and it actually involved such a secret. The 3 godbird family in Kanto region has always been called the god of water, god of fire, and god of thunder, but no one knows their past. Even after it has mastered a lot of information about the world, it has never found more records about their origins. Who would have guessed that the legendary 3 godbirds were originally just ordinary Pokemon, and only started to rise under Chen's helping hand? Thinking of this, Mutuo suddenly had a new understanding of Chen's strength. The power of the law given at hand can achieve the existence of the 3 legendary figures. So what is his own strength? Thinking of what Rayquaza said, Chen was severely injured. How strong are those dark demons? At this time, Mutuo only felt shivering, recalling the endless darkness that he had been in, and his expression gradually became dignified. Will those dark demon gods return to this world? Today, it is one of the masters of this world. That is, human beings do not have much emotion, but they do not want this world to be destroyed. After all, in addition to humans, there are countless Pokemon in this world. However, the answer given by Rayquaza is not satisfactory. Chen said that after tens of thousands of years, those things will make a comeback. His prophecy never goes wrong, and that's why I protect the world. Speaking of this, Rayquaza's eyes flashed a hint of worry, and he turned his head to look at the exit of the main hall. His eyes seemed to be able to look through the heavenly palace. I can feel that the breath of darkness has begun to revive. I'm afraid it won't be long before those things come to this world again. Hearing this, Mutuo also fell silent, and her expression became more and more solemn. 90,000 years ago, although humans and Pokemon won the victory and drove those things out of this world, all the credit was due to the existence of Chen. But now, Chen has fallen into a deep sleep, and he doesn't know when he will wake up. Without Chen, Can they defeat those so-called dark demon gods again? Mutuo looked at the palm of his hand, and the blue confusion lingered. Since it was promoted to the first-level divine beast, its strength has been greatly improved, and it even once had the illusion that it could control the world. But now, in the face of the unknown dark devil, it actually gave birth to a feeling of unconfidence. In that level of battle, even if it is a first-level divine beast, it would be difficult for it to play a big role. Only the existence of Rayquaza and Chen. But where is he now? Didn't he also predict that he would one day wake up and return to this world? Perhaps they were all thinking about this question, and looking at the setting sun that was setting in the distance, Mutuo and Rayquaza fell into silence for a while. Meanwhile, inside the Pokémon Alliance headquarters, in the huge laboratory, Professor Oak, Lance and others are still studying the isolated dark matter. Even if they have mobilized various resources in the entire Alliance and invited several top research experts, it is still difficult to obtain much useful information from them. The power in the dark matter is too strange and powerful, except for knowing that it will affect Pokémon. I don't know anything else. Even if they interrogated the researchers dedicated to this block within Team Rockets again, the information was the same. Team Rockets has spent countless efforts, and they haven't been able to find other information about this dark matter for so many years. They can only rely on some external means to control it and make it into a Pokeball. Just as everyone was frowning and thinking, the sound of hurried footsteps suddenly sounded in the laboratory. A female assistant hurried over, holding a document in her hand. Sir Toto, I found information about those hazes in the video. The Johto region has recently discovered a ruin with records about Mr. Chen and those hazes. While speaking, the female assistant placed the document in front of Lance. The things recorded on it are general information about the ruins. Everyone around, including Professor Oak and Lance, was shocked after seeing the information, got up and left the place quickly, and rushed towards the ruins. Because the distance is not too far, in the early morning of the next day, a group of top leaders of the Alliance and elite champions rushed to the ruins. Relevant staff had already made preparations and brought them to the newly discovered murals. Looking at the scene on the mural, everyone fell into shock and surprise. It was a picture of a battle. Although it was drawn very casually, a lot of things could still be seen from it. A behemoth eats the Litian temple, and from the appearance, it is a legendary beast. On the forehead of one of the dragon-shaped beasts, there was a figure standing. Below these divine beasts, there is an endless black mist. They had seen this picture before. It was a part of the battle scene replayed by the gods. The identity of the figure was naturally revealed. Leaf. Master Du, according to our analysis of the texts recorded in the ruins, these murals should describe a war that originated in ancient times. According to the records, in order to protect the world, the chosen person fought a dark existence from another dimension. That battle lasted for a long time, and in the end, the chosen man successfully won. But he also paid a great price for it. What? Existence from another dimension? Listening to the researcher's explanation, the elite champions of the Alliance all gasped, and their eyes showed a look of astonishment. The researchers didn't know as much as they did, and although it wasn't clear why they made such an expression, they nodded anyway. Yes, according to the records in the ruins, those hazes and the existences in them are from another dimension, and they suddenly came to this world in the ancient times. They revere war and killing, and so the chosen have fought against them. At the end of the battle, those beings were driven back to their dimensions, and the chosen ones were also hit hard, and finally fell into an endless slumber. By the way, there is also a prophecy recorded on the last mural. Darkness will come again. The researchers are very dedicated to reporting the current findings one by one, but Lance and others are more and more shocked. These are the secrets they have never known, and they have also solved many doubts for them. No wonder we exhausted the strength of the entire Alliance and still can't find Mr. Chen's trace. I didn't expect it to fall into a deep sleep. Darkness will come again? Is it saying that those other dimensional existences will come back? Everyone looked at each other in dismay, and while they were shocked, a strong worry began to appear in their eyes. There was even a hint of fear. Whether it's the frescoes in front of them or the battle scenes they've seen before, all of them clearly tell them the power of those hazes. Even if he is as strong as Chen and has many legendary beasts to follow, he has barely won, and he has even paid a huge price for it. Now Chen has fallen into a deep sleep. If those dark beings really come again as prophesied, who else in the world can resist? Pokemon League? The elite champions looked at each other. They still have this self-awareness. Although the people present were very confident in their respective strengths, they were also compared with others. They had seen the horror of that battle. Even an existence like Lance could only be reduced to cannon fodder in that level of battle, let alone defeat those hazes. With the strength of those dark beings, let alone the Pokemon Alliance, without Yi-Chun, I am afraid that the gods are not their opponents. Thinking of this, the worry in the eyes of Lance and others grew stronger. This is not as simple as a time bomb. Once those dark existences make a comeback, the only thing waiting for the whole world is destruction. And the Pokemon Alliance, as the largest organization that maintains this world, naturally cannot let this happen. Everyone looked at each other again. In addition to praying that Yi-Chun can wake up from his deep sleep as soon as possible, all they can do now is to send a large number of people to find the place where Yi-Chun slept, so as to improve their strength as much as possible. Knowing everything, the Pokemon Alliance executives, under the pressure, quickly launched an action. More and more people were sent all over the world to find the place where Yi-Chun slept. The major ancient ruins are also listed as the top secret of the Alliance, and researchers who are in charge of the ancient times are called in a lot, and they are dispatched to various places just to find some clues in the ruins. Such a big action naturally also alarmed the major underground organizations. Team Magma, Team Aqua, Plasma Core, etc. have sent a large number of people to find out the secrets, but in the end they are all gone. The Pokemon Alliance is concerned about this matter to the point of madness. Team Magma, who was trying to gain control of a newly discovered ruin, and then got a glimpse of the truth, immediately attracted a large number of Alliance superior members to attack. Even the elite champion was alerted, and Lance personally went to suppress it with the Ace Dragonite. Since then, the major underground organizations have also seen the determination of the Pokemon Alliance, and dare not make any thought in this regard. In addition to the great efforts to search for the ruins, the Pokemon Alliance also asked Major Gym to issue challenge invitations. Everyone is encouraged to go to the Gym Challenge. In addition to the Gym Badge, the winner will also receive additional rewards from the Pokemon Alliance, as well as the opportunity to serve in the Alliance. In addition to encouraging trainers from all over the world to improve their strength, this move can help the Alliance to identify and recruit talented Pokemon trainers more quickly. To this end, the Pokemon Alliance has promised a lot of rich conditions, which made countless people start to be excited. A challenge fever gradually set off. Trainers from all over the world have been intensively improving their strengths, until the God List, which had been silent for a long time in the Champion Arena, appeared again. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. You can read more daily new novels on fictionzone.net. Both sites share the same login details, so you don't need to sign up again. Chapter 67. Boom. When all the trainers were busy, the silent gods roared loudly again. The movement this time was unprecedented. A terrifying divine light rose from the sky, covering almost the entire Champion Arena. Even people from dozens of kilometers away can vaguely see the light reaching the sky. People all over the world felt a sense of emotion at this moment, as if they were in the Champion Arena, clearly feeling the terrifying change. What happened? God. What happened to the God List? Is it possible that a new list will be released? I don't think it's that simple. This time the change is stronger than ever, and my Charmeleon is starting to get restless. Kanto region. Johto region. Hoenn region. The trainers in each region noticed the abnormality and all looked up in the same direction of the Tiangong. That's the direction of the Indigo Plateau, Champions Arena. At this time, in the headquarters of the Pokemon Alliance, Lance, Damalanki, and others also noticed the terrifying fluctuations that bloomed from the God List. Shinbang, is it finally going to be opened again? Lance stood in front of the huge floor-to-ceiling window, looking at the sky, and while being shocked by the movement of the gods, there was a hint of joy in his eyes. During this time, the entire Pokemon League has been working to improve their strength, and in addition to absorb training those talented trainers, they are also encouraging trainers around the world to improve their own strength, in order to meet the possible end of the war. While improving the overall strength of Pokemon trainers, elite champions within the league are also working to strengthen themselves. Using the rewards from the previous God List, the ace Pokemon of each region champion has successfully broken through to the 3rd level God, and the elites have also broken through to the champion, or even higher levels. Such an extremely rapid improvement was never imagined before. And the root of all this is the God List. Now that there is movement on the God List again, it is very likely that a new list will be released. With the release of a large number of rewards, the strength of the entire Alliance and many trainers around the world will be greatly improved, which is naturally good news for the Pokemon Alliance now under great pressure. Damn Allen, who was on the side, also had a happy expression on his face. The movement of the gods list is so big this time, and the rewards will probably be much better. 617, yeah. I just don't know how many elite champions in our league will make the list this time around. Lance nodded in agreement, and as soon as he finished speaking, a picture appeared in his mind. At the same time, this picture also appeared in the minds of all people around the world. Countless golden streamers poured out of nothingness and then condensed into simple words. There is a sound of flood and desolation born out of thin air, which is shocking. The latest leaderboard will open in 1 hour. The open rankings are Flight List, General List, Poison List, Ground List, Rock List. As the names of the lists were read out, the expressions on everyone's faces gradually changed from surprise to shock. But the voice of the gods did not stop. The names of the lists are still being pronounced. I don't know how long it took, until the shock on people's faces gradually became numb, and the sound came to an end. In addition to the previously open dragon and psychic lists, a list of the remaining 16 attributes. They are all included in this opening. Is this insane? My God, the whole list is open. That seemed to be illusion just now? Come on, give me a slap. Damn it. 16 lists are open together. Can't Pokemon of all attributes be on the list? Ha 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 ha. It's great. I finally got through. This time I must be on the list. Shock and surprise appeared on everyone's faces, and after a brief silence, trainers all over the world burst into cheers. All attribute rankings of the God ranking are open, and it will be a carnival for the top trainers around the world. It's a chance for everyone to improve. In the previous list, everyone already knew how terrifying the rewards of the leaderboard. Team Magma Headquarters. Chi Yinsong listened to the system's broadcast, and his eyes were already filled with shock. In addition to that, there was an undisguised ecstasy. Ha 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 ha. Great. All the lists are open. We Team Magma will definitely have a lot of people on the list this time. Not to mention other rankings. He still has great confidence in the fire element rankings. Including him, many superior members of Team Magma have extremely powerful fire-type Pokemon in their hands, and many even have fire-type Pokemon as King, BDCB, cards. Flame, Hokage, Huoyin. The three of them should all be able to enter the top 50, and even the top 20 is not impossible. As for my Camerupt, it should be in the top 10 at least. Chi Yinsong's eyes flashed with confidence. His Camerupt strength is at the champion level, and even if he can't compete for the top spot, he's definitely not far behind. If it weren't for the mysterious Yi Chun, he would most likely appear in this list, and he believed that his top 5 rankings would not be a problem. When he thought of the rewards that the God list had issued, even with his heart, he couldn't help but get excited. With the release of the list, this time, Team Magma's strength is bound to increase significantly. And the same scene happens all over the world. In Team Aqua, Archie directly called his subordinates and began to organize the powerful Pokemon in the organization, estimating the harvest of Team Aqua this time. This time on the Water-type rankings, we have to occupy at least 10 or more. Plasma Cluster. Kikisi played with a Pokeball in his hand, his eyes twinkling. 16 rankings will be released together. This time will be a great opportunity for us to improve our strength. Hydreigon, I hope you won't disappoint me. Since the last Dragon ranking, his ace Pokemon had not been on the list, he had known that Hydreigon must have been placed on the Dark ranking. This time all the lists are open, and he will surely occupy a place. Thinking back on his own Pokemon, Kueichisi slowly closed his eyes, waiting for the real release of the leaderboard. Meanwhile, the Pokemon Alliance headquarters. As the voice of the gods came out, Lance, Cynthia, and the others quickly recovered after a brief shock, with surprises in their eyes. That's great. With all the rankings open, the strength of those powerful trainers in the Alliance will definitely improve a lot. Yes, this is an opportunity for us. As long as we can get enough rankings, our overall strength will be improved by at least 1 level. This is probably the best news we've heard in a while. Even the always serious Bruno couldn't help showing a smile at this time. Since learning of the origins of those hazes, the entire Pokemon Alliance's top ranks are as if they are being weighed down by a giant mountain, breathless. Especially during this time, all elite champions are training like crazy to improve their strength. The purpose is to wait until the prophecy is fulfilled, so as to have some self-preservation power. However, at their level, it is too difficult to rely on training alone to improve. And now the news announced by the gods list is tantamount to giving everyone a shot in the heart. As the chairman, Damalin also had a smile on his face at this time, but he thought longer than others. Call someone to prepare, and after the rankings are announced, collect the information of all the people on the rankings to see if anyone can be recruited into the alliance. It's a good opportunity for us to develop top trainers by promising all kinds of privileges and emphasis on training. Hearing this, everyone nodded in agreement. Next is to wait patiently. In the champion arena, the timing numbers displayed on the leaderboard are decreasing by 1 minute by one. Just when the world is nervously waiting for the release of the rankings, outside the world, in another dimension, this is a dimension completely occupied by darkness. Haze, which seems to be able to devour everything, is shrouded in every corner of this world, and there is silence and chaos everywhere. And in the center of this world, in the boundless darkness, two blood-like red lights slowly lit up. The surrounding haze suddenly began to surge wildly, and an extremely terrifying aura spread out in an instant. At the moment when these two red lights lit up, one after another was wrapped in haze and came to this place. "Welcome to the leader." The dull and eerie voice resounded in the boundless darkness, sending chills down the spine. The terrifying aura around the pair of red eyes began to gradually dissipate. "How long have I slept? 9,000 years. What about the other guys? The other leaders have all awakened 10,000 years ago, just waiting for you to wake up." "Very good." Haze rolled violently again, and then began to shrink rapidly, as if being sucked into the body by the owner of the pair of red eyes. "In 90,000 years, my strength has returned to its peak, even stronger than before. This time, even if that human being is still alive, it is impossible to stop our steps. It's time to clear up the hatred of the past." A terrifying breath gushed out, and the haze of the whole world seemed to be stirred and began to surging frantically, as if there was a huge storm stirring in it. Meanwhile, the Pokemon world. While the world was anxiously waiting, the countdown to the list of gods finally came to 0 in the champion arena. As a vast bell rang in everyone's mind, countless golden lights suddenly emerged. The latest rankings will be announced soon. Ranking of the strongest flying Pokemon trainers. Conditions to enter the list. Among all regions, the top 100 flight-type Pokemon that have been conquered in strength will enter the list. Pokemon that has already been listed cannot be listed repeatedly. As the voice of the gods came out, everyone became excited, especially the trainers with flying Pokemon as their ace. All of them pricked up their ears and widened their eyes, for fear that they would miss any ranking. "It's great. It's worth it that I have trained 4 Pokemon of the flight department. This time I finally have a place for me. Many people want a Pokemon in the flight department just for transportation. If someone like me is trained carefully, they will definitely be ranked. I don't know what the reward for this list will be. It shouldn't be worse than the previous 2. Countless flying Pokemon trainers began to cheer, looking forward to their rankings. Many people even fantasized about the huge improvement after they got the reward. After all, in the first 2 rankings, the rewards for trainers on the rankings were obvious to all. As for the rest of the trainers, they were not disappointed or discouraged at all after hearing that the flight department list was the first to be opened. The order of precedence no longer matters. Because they are very clear, this time, all the lists will be open. As long as the strength is enough, they will eventually appear on the list. Unova region. Alder looked at the god list prompt in front of him, and couldn't help but flash a look of joy in his eyes. "Braviary, it's up to you this time." He patted the giant eagle beside him, and the latter chirped loudly, as if responding to his words. Galar region. Leon looked at Charizard beside him and couldn't help rolling his eyes. "It is estimated that you will have to wait a little longer. You should appear on the fire element ranking. It's just right. Take this opportunity to see what level the top trainers in the world have reached." In Kalos region, Diantha is drinking coffee gracefully, looking carefully, but her eyes are a little ecstatic, as if she is thinking about something else. The flight department rankings should not be dominated by Mr. Yi-chan like before. She muttered to herself, then smiled and shook her head. She feels that the chance of the other party topping the list is very high. Johto region, Hoenn region, Team Magma, Team Aqua. As the voice of the gods came out, even trainers who didn't have a flight-type Pokemon were looking forward to it at the moment. Boom. At the same time, in the champion arena, the infinite golden light continued to overflow from the god list, and then formed a light curtain that was enough to cover the sky. Simple and mysterious words slowly emerged. 100th place, Big Bird current trainer, Lista level strength, leader peak ranking reward, quasi-elite berry *2 with the appearance of the final rankings. After a brief silence, everyone couldn't help but exclaimed, "My God, the reward has increased again?" The last time the psychic rankings were just a quasi-elite berry at the end, but now it's doubled? Sure enough, The rewards released by the gods list are getting more and more perverted. There are 2 quasi-elite berry at the end of the leaderboard. Isn't the reward for the first place going against the sky? There were voices of shock everywhere, and after the shock, there were collective cheers. This is the real feast. Overwhelming all the rewards announced earlier, even the reward at the end is enough to make everyone excited. And this time, everyone has a chance to get it. Not only the trainers of the flight department fell into madness, but the rest of the trainers who were confident in their own strength were also looking forward to it. This is the best chance to take off in one fell swoop. No matter what their current situation is, as long as they can occupy any seat in the mini ranking list that will be announced soon, they can be reborn with the help of horror rewards. This is the stepping stone for the top powerhouses to lead to higher places, and it is also the cornerstone for those poor trainers to jump up. Everyone went crazy. Including the major forces, everyone became extremely excited when they saw this reward. A new century is about to begin. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. Chapter 68. With the distribution of a large number of rewards, the strength of countless top trainers will complete a qualitative leap. This was completely unimaginable before. The overall strength of the Pokemon trainers in the entire world will probably increase by at least 2 levels. Thinking of this, everyone's breathing became heavier. Especially those trainers who focus on training flight-type Pokemon are sweating nervously on their foreheads. The opportunity to soar is at hand. Fiero, you must fight for something. With my far-fetched strength, it's definitely not a problem to make it to the list. Maybe, can make it into the top 80? Although the competition is fierce, Owl, I believe you can do it. The flight trainers all prayed secretly and waited for the ranking of the gods to continue to be announced. On the barrier covering the sky, golden tassels slowly flowed, and then a line of simple characters appeared. Number 99, Yenma current trainer, Faulkner level strength, leader peak ranking reward, quasi-elite berry *2 plus perfect quality sky plate. Number 98, Jumpluff current trainer, Liyuan level strength, leader peak rank rewards, quasi-elite berry *2 plus perfect quality psychic gems *15. Number 85, Yanmega current trainer, leaving ball level strength, leader peak ranking reward, quasi-elite berry *481st, Swana current trainer, Naki level strength, leader peak ranking reward, quasi-elite berry *4 plus move machine, Giga. Impact. The list was announced one by one, and the frenzy in the eyes of everyone became more intense. Although the rankings announced so far have not changed much compared to the previous ones, the rewards are nearly doubled. Especially everyone in the headquarters of the Pokemon Alliance showed joy after seeing this ranking. Faulkner and Naki are both based on flying Pokemon, plus the ace Pokemon that has not yet appeared. This time will definitely get a lot of rewards. The following list is estimated to be the same. Our leaders in each region, and even elite champions, have the opportunity to win a lot of rewards in this all-attribute list. I'm afraid that the comprehensive strength I mentioned before is a bit too conservative. Lance had an undisguised smile on his face. The greater everyone's strength improved, the more confrontational strength they would be able to face in the face of the crisis that may come. Even if this enhancement is a drop in the bucket compared to the opponent's strength, it's always good to be stronger. Compared with their reactions, ordinary people who have no pressure will appear more excited. That's our gym leader of Kikyo Town. Cut. What are you arrogant about? Lady Naki is the gym leader of our Fortree City. Do you see how proud we are? There are so many quasi-elite berry. Just give me one and I can rise directly. Some are excited, some are looking forward to it, and some are envious. In front of this all-attribute feast, no one can control their emotions. With the surging of the golden streamer, the rankings are still being revealed. 80th, Crobat current trainer, Ramda equivalent strength, quasi-elite primary ranking rewards, elite berry *2 plus perfect quality psychic gems *20. As the list progressed to the top 80, the quality of the awards suddenly jumped up a notch. After seeing this ranking, a group of high-level executives at the headquarters of the Alliance suddenly showed a strange color on their faces. Is this Ramda the cadre of Team Rockets? Lance spoke somewhat uncertainly. He vaguely seemed to remember such a person, but because he didn't have much contact with him, he didn't remember very clearly. However, Cynthia on the side confirmed his conjecture. He was also one of the first Team Rockets cadres to be apprehended along with Giovanni and is now being held in the headquarters prison. If that's the case, then confiscate his reward. Damalangi touched the large beard on his chin and slowly opened his mouth. Taking and robbing is not the style of the Pokemon Alliance, but as the prisoner, these rewards naturally cannot be returned to him, and will only become a bigger obstacle for the Alliance in the future. What's more, in a special period now, the League just needs a lot of resources to cultivate excellent training. This is not for their own power, but for the whole world. Let people pay attention later. If Team Rockets has other Pokemon on the list, they will all be recorded, and the rewards will be confiscated at that time. Yes. An elite nodded and quickly went down to comply. At this time, the Team Rockets who were in the Alliance prison were already dead. Of course, they knew that in their current situation, it was impossible to truly get a reward. The list is fully open, and the rewards are unprecedentedly rich. If you change it, you will definitely be excited. However, now it is just a wedding dress for the Pokemon Alliance. Giovanni sat cross-legged on the bed in the prison, looking at the picture of the gods in front of him, clenching his fists tightly, not even paying attention to the nails embedded in the flesh. Pokemon League, one day, I will make you pay the price. Cruel hatred surged in his eyes, but in the end he could only be smashed by the walls of the prison. In the champion arena, as the rankings on the god list were gradually announced, the entire arena was boiling. Number 61, Natural Black Current Trainer. Win Dew Level Strength, Quasi-Elite Intermediate Ranking Reward, Elite Berry * 2 plus Quasi-Elite Berry * 3 plus Move Machine. Magic Room Number 60, Front Queen Current Trainer, Chanel Level Strength, Quasi-Elite Intermediate Rank Reward, Elite Berry * 4. Isn't that Miss Fanglu, our leader of Mistralton City Gym? It's a pity. If you can advance one more place, you can get a big reward. My god, for Elite Berry, this list is a wholesale elite. Some people showed regret, and some people were shocked by the horror of the reward. However, with the continuous appearance of the list, everyone has gradually recovered from the initial excitement. Except for the flight department trainers who are still anxiously looking forward to it, everyone else has begun to discuss the advanced ranking rewards and rankings of this list. From the 80th to the 30th, the rewards on the list are mainly based on Elite Berry, nothing more than the number and the difference between the quality of all other rewards. Essentially, there is no leap forward. What really makes everyone care is the reward at the top of the list. Even if most people don't have the chance to touch it, they are looking forward to it. This is a great opportunity to learn a lot. Under the expectations of many people, the simple words on the list finally showed a top ranking. Taking time, the crowd that had gradually calmed down fell into a frenzy again. 30th place, Staraptor Current Trainer, Kazuri Level Strength, Quasi-Elite Advanced Training, Kahiri Ranking Reward, Champion Berry plus Elite Berry * 2. My god, the Champion Berry started appearing in the 30s? Have you noticed that there are so many top trainers in the flight department? Yeah, I always thought that this should be an unpopular attribute, but I didn't expect so many masters. Naturally, no one doubts the authenticity of this ranking. After all, there is no possibility of cheating on the god list with so many terrifying rewards. This also subverts the perception of many people. Many trainers will subdue one or two flying Pokemon and use the helping hand on their own in some special occasions, and because of this, in most people's impressions, flying can be regarded as an unpopular type. There are a lot of Pokemon trainers in the flight department, but few who focus on training them. And today's rankings can be regarded as an eye-opener for everyone. Of course, compared to the list of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, what shocked them more was the reward. The Champion Berry will appear in the 30th place. How good will the reward for the top 10 be? Except for the trainers of Dragon and Psychic, the trainers of other attributes will probably make a fortune this time. Hey, I've already ranked 30th. It seems that I shouldn't be able to make it on the list. I don't know what the top 10 rewards will be. I am afraid that after today, many champions will rise. Someone sighed, and their faces were full of envy. The other person beside him disapproved, instead showing an unfathomable smile. That's not necessarily true. Don't forget, there is also Mr. Yi-chan. As soon as these words came out, it was like Daigo empowerment. Many people reacted in an instant and then showed a touch of panic. Everyone still remembers the terrifying scene of being overtaken by the Dragon ranking when the God ranking was first launched. In the top 10 on the list, there is not one left. Even Lance's Ace Dragonite only got the 11th place reward. If the gods and beasts dominate the list, if they were put in the past, it would be impossible to believe them if they were killed. But this is a lesson from the past. For flowers. Thinking of this, everyone couldn't help shivering. This time the full attribute list is open, and no one can stay out of it. If the list that they are in has that kind of domination situation again, the possibility of them being on the list and getting rewards will be relatively low. Damn. Oh, I actually forgot that great god. No wonder I couldn't make it on the list this time, and the flight department list is probably occupied by a lot. It shouldn't be. Although from Mr. Yi Chen's previous battle images, he should have many divine beasts that haven't been on the list yet, but this time it's a full attribute list after all. That's right, even if Mr. Yi Chen has more than a dozen divine beasts that haven't appeared, there will only be one on the average list. I guess it's not that simple. Looking at the strength and ranking of the flight department's ranking list, I'm afraid the top 3 positions have already been occupied. Everyone discussed and analyzed each other, and the high-level officials of various forces also thought of this. The higher the ranking, the higher the reward, especially the top 10, and even the top 5 seats. The reward is skydifying. Once obtained, the increase in strength will be extremely terrifying. Sinnoh region, Cynthia looked at the constantly announced rankings, and couldn't help but feel a little nervous at this time. In addition to Ace Garchomp, her Togekiss will most likely be placed on the flight list this time. It's just not clear how the specific rankings are. I don't know how many places Mr. Yi Chen will occupy this time. If I only occupy 3, with the strength of my Togekiss, I might have a chance to compete for the top 5. There may be many top trainers in the flight department, but there are definitely not many who have trained her to this level. In her impression, there should be not many flying Pokemon with the strength of champion. In the top ranking, she has a high probability to compete. And there are many people who have the same idea. Even if they knew of Yi Chen's existence, the top few on the list were probably hopeless, but they were all still eyeing them. After all, what will be open this time will be the full attribute list. Even if there are many mythical beasts following Yi Chen, it is impossible to occupy every list. On average, 2 or 3 of a list are outrageous. Not only ordinary people, but also Lance and others at the Alliance headquarters also had the same idea. Professor Oak, how many Pokemon do you think Mr. Yi Chen will have on the list this time? Damalanki looked at Oak, who was thinking, and suddenly spoke. The latter just shook his head with a wry smile. Although he has devoted his life to researching Pokemon, he is only targeting ordinary Pokemon. The Pokemon that Yi Chen appeared were all divine beasts, the kind that only existed in ancient legends, and some of them were not even recognized by him. I think if you want to figure this out, I'm afraid you have to summarize the ancient legends first. Yes, but according to my guess, with so many lists, even if Mr. Yi Chen is followed by many mythical beasts, it should be difficult for him to occupy too many seats. That's not right. A smile appeared at the corner of Cynthia's mouth. Last time, Mr. Yi Chen completely dominated the list of dragons, so your Ace Dragonite didn't even make it into the top 10. This time you can make up a lot of rewards. If I remember correctly, most of your other main Pokemon should be flying. Speaking of this, the other elite champions also reacted and looked at Lance with envy. The top 10 of the Dragon Elements list that was first opened were all occupied, which was a big loss for Lance. Otherwise, he would have already reached the top with the strength of his Ace Dragonite. This time the flight department list can make up for a lot of losses. After all, although he is known as the strongest Dragon-type trainer, in fact, many of Lance's main Pokemon are Flying-type, just in time to catch up with this list. The latter naturally understood this, scratched his head, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. That's what I said, but it's not clear how many flying beasts Mr. Yi Chen has. In case there is another domination. You kid, you can still sell well when you get cheap. Damalangi patted Lance on the shoulder. I remember your Aerodactyl is already at the top of the Champions League now, so there's no problem getting into the top 5. In Altaria, you can occupy at least 2 of the top 10 seats. Hurry up and have fun. Perhaps in order to ease the atmosphere, Damalanki's tone was very relaxed, and everyone also showed a smile at this moment. Meanwhile, at the Champions Arena, the text on the leaderboard is constantly changing. The ranking has also entered the top 15. The rewards are up again. Yes. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. Chapter 69. 15th. Gyarados, non-main force trainer, Lance level strength, champion early stage ranking rewards, Ultra Stone plus Ultimate Berry * 2 moves plus machine. Giga Impact, damn it, the reward for the 15th place is so generous? Counting the rewards from the previous Dragon rankings, I am afraid that Lord Lance will be able to cultivate a Pokemon team with the limit of champion. It's terrifying. I'm afraid no one can compete with him for the championship position. The exclamations came one after another, and they were all shocked by the shocking rewards of the gods. As the party concerned, Lance was calm and even a little regretful at this time. It's only the 15th place. It seems that this flight department list is not simple. According to his original expectation, with the strength of Gyarados in the early stage of champion, the ranking should be higher. There may even be hopes of making the top 10. However, this result is not bad. With the super limit stone, my strength should be able to improve a lot again. Only. Lance's expression was condensed, and his fists were tightly clenched together. He knew very well that compared with the existences that he might be facing, this increase in strength was simply insignificant. He needs to get stronger, and he needs more rewards. The list is still being published. 13th, Murkrow Trainer, Duran level strength, Champion Junior ranking rewards, exceeded Stone *2 plus limited berry 11th place. Crobat Trainer, Archie level strength, Champion Intermediate rank reward, Fragment of the Law of Flight 10th. Gyarados Trainer, Lance level strength, Champion limit ranking rewards, Flying Law Fragments plus exceeding Stones 633 9th place. Aerodactyl Trainer, Lance level strength, Champion limit ranking reward, Flying Law Fragment plus exceeding Stone *2 as. The new rankings appeared, everyone held their breaths, especially in the Pokemon League headquarters, where a quiet needle drop could be heard. Lance's eyes widened, obviously not expecting this result. Aerodactyl, the champion's limit, is only 9th? He looked at the list of gods that was still evolving, and his eyes gradually showed shock. He guessed that his ranking could not be too high, and that name would definitely appear on the list, but he never thought that it would occupy so many positions. And equally shocked, there are everyone who is watching this scene. Isn't it possible? The first 8 positions are all Mr. Yi Chen's? I guess yes. Didn't you see that even Lance's champion limit Aerodactyl is on the list? No one should be able to surpass him. I can't count any mythical beasts that can make it to this list with my fingers, but this time there are 8. Just take it as a long-term experience. Puff. Mr. Yi Chen has never let us down in terms of dominating the list. In the voice of the crowd, the next person on the list appeared. 8th place, Tornadus current trainer, Yi Chen level strength, secondary god primary 7th place, Thundurus level strength, secondary god primary 6th place, Landorus level strength, level 2 god intermediate. What kind of cloud is actually a divine beast? Damn it. It's the first time I've seen this kind of Pokemon. What a powerful force. Looking at the 3 figures manifested in the sky, everyone was stunned for a while. The vast majority of people don't say goodbye, and it is even the first time they hear about the existence of such a mythical beast. Even Professor Oak and the others in the Alliance headquarters had a strange look on their faces at this time. This kind of Pokemon, I seem to have heard of it in a legend, but there are too few descriptions, only that they seem to affect the weather. Cynthia frowned, as if trying to recall. At the same time, in the Unova region, Alder looked at the picture projected by the gods, and his eyes were full of excitement. These 3 legendary beasts, I didn't expect that they really exist. The entire Unova region has always had legends about these 3 mythical beasts, but no one has ever seen them. Even he suspected that they were just compiled by the ancients. Unexpectedly, it actually exists in the world, and it has been subdued by Yi Chen. For that familiar and unfamiliar name, for a while, Alder couldn't help but feel a little more admiration in his heart. Just when everyone's mood was different, the ranking of the gods list has come to an end. 5th place. Ancestor Moltres level strength, 1st level god advanced 4th place. Ancestor Articuno level strength, 1st level god advanced 3rd place. Ancestor Zapdos level strength, 1st level god advanced 2nd place. Ho-Oh level strength, the pinnacle of 1st level gods with the magical power of resurrecting the dead. It is said that those who have seen it can obtain eternal happiness. As the list came to an end, a huge figure appeared above the champion arena. It looks like Ho-Oh, with a yellow crest on its head and colorful feathers fluttering in the wind behind it. At the moment when this figure appeared, a splendid Celadon/rainbow appeared on the sky, spanning the entire champion arena. What kind of beast is this? Ho-Oh? Resurrection, dead? This ability is too heaven-defying. Is this really just an image? The crowd was horrified. With the appearance of Ho-Oh phantoms, the entire champion arena is full of life. Many people were horrified to find that some of the residual injuries on them or Pokemon had begun to heal gradually. This is a miracle. Even Lance and others were shocked by the terrifying vitality emanating from Tiangong's figure, and Professor Oak seemed extremely excited. The legendary beast that can resurrect the dead actually exists? No, since even this kind of divine beast has already followed Mr. Yi Chen. Why is he? Suddenly, Professor Oak seemed to think of something, and his expression gradually became stiff. Lance, Damalanki and the others were also shocked when he reminded them like this. Ho-Oh, who is at the pinnacle of the 1st level god, has the ability to revive the dead. As Yi Chen's follower, it is impossible to sit idly by after the latter is injured. The only explanation is that all of the latter's injuries are beyond Ho-Oh's abilities. Thinking of this, everyone's mood suddenly became heavy. They know secrets that ordinary people don't know. When those unknown dark existences came to this world again, if Chen hadn't woken up from his slumber, their odds of winning would be terrifyingly low, even if they have tried their best to improve their own strength during this period of time. In front of that level of strength, what they can do is still extremely limited. The only hope is Chen. The information about Ho-Oh in front of them made them even more worried. When the darkness came, Chen didn't wake up again. How should they deal with it? People faced the country. While the outside world was shocked by Ho-Oh's powerful aura, the Alliance headquarters fell into a dead silence. At this time, the rankings are still evolving. First place, Ancestor Lugia level strength. First level God limit. The first Lugia born in heaven and earth sleeps in the depths of the ocean trench. Legend has it that when it flaps its wings, it will cause a storm that lasts 40 days. Looking at the description on the leaderboard, after a brief silence, everyone could not help but take a breath of air, and at the same time showed a look of horror. Divine Beast, there are also ethnic groups? It was the first time for many people to know this secret, and it was only at this moment that they recalled that there was also the word ancestor in front of the name of the three divine birds. The first Lugia born in heaven and earth. Isn't that the patriarch of the divine beast, or the ancestor? Even this divine beast can be subdued. How on earth did Mr. Chen do it? Everyone was completely shocked, and even Professor Oak and others were shocked by the influence of Lugia, the ancestor who evolved from the gods, and for a while they left other things behind. It wasn't until a burst of rapid footsteps came that everyone woke up from the shock. President, Mr. Du, something happened? The person who came was one of the personnel in charge of communications in the Alliance, holding a document in his hand, looking very anxious. This is a request for help just arrived from Noera City, Sinnoh region. There's suddenly a lot of vicious incidents of wild Pokemon attacking humans. The Wake leader has led some members of the Alliance to rescue, but with limited success. As of now, the number of people injured in this incident has exceeded 200. The man said in a hurry and handed over the information in his hand. All the Alliance elite champions gathered here changed their expressions after hearing this, and all turned their attention to it. Even Lance frowned. Wild Pokemon attacking humans? How can this happen? Could it be caused by members of those evil organizations? This kind of thing was said a long time ago, but since humans and Pokemon found a way to coexist peacefully, there has never been a case of wild Pokemon hurting people. This event is too abnormal. The person who reported the situation was clearly aware of this, and said quickly, the exact reason has not been figured out, but what is certain is that those Pokemon are wild, as if they suddenly fell into a frenzy. In addition, there is no trace of an underground organization. Hearing this, everyone's expressions became solemn again, and there was a little doubt in the depths of their eyes. At this time, Allen had already read the document, and his expression was equally awe-inspiring. This matter must be dealt with urgently. Cynthia, bring some superior members of the Alliance to support. Good. Hearing this, Cynthia nodded immediately and left the place resolutely. President, why don't I go too? I have a feeling that this matter is not easy. Lance frowned, a little uneasy in his expression. Damalangi just waved his hand. The rewards of the God list will be distributed soon. Although the top rankings this time are also occupied by Mr. Chen, you have received a lot of rewards. The most important thing at the moment is to improve your strength. If Mr. Chen doesn't wake up, you are our biggest support. Damalangi put his hands behind his back, looked at the sky outside the floor-to-ceiling window, and sighed slowly. The impact of this event is indeed huge, but one champion is enough. For them, the biggest threat right now is the darkness that could make a comeback. That is the power to destroy the world. Before it arrives, it is necessary to do everything possible to improve the strength. Especially Lance, who is currently the strongest trainer. Every minute must be counted to become as strong as possible. The latter obviously understood this, and did not refute anything, but nodded with a firm expression. The rankings of the God list have all been announced. As Ho-Oh's influence faded away, the voice of the gods rang out in everyone's hearts again. Flight list rewards have all been sent. The list of the strongest fire-type Pokemon trainers will be announced soon. Conditions for entering the list. Among all regions, the top 100 fire-type Pokemon that have been conquered in strength will enter the list. Pokemon that has already been listed cannot be listed repeatedly. Sinnoh region, Noera City. Unlike the rest of the world who are closely following the leaderboard, the Noera City trainers at this time have no time or energy to pay attention. The once peaceful and beautiful city of Noera has long since been turned into a sea of fiery ruins. Bulbasaur, use the seed bomb. A young man who looked to be in his early 20s was nervously commanding Bulbasaur in front of him, with an unconcealed look of fear in his eyes. In front of him was a red-eyed Monferno, who was staring at him with a grin, as if he was going to eat him alive. As a trainer, although he has experienced many battles, this is the first time he has faced such a vicious Pokémon. The house where he originally lived had long since been reduced to ruins by Monferno's frantic attack, and he had also suffered a lot of injuries in previous battles. The tingling and burning sensation on his arm kept coming, making it even more difficult for him, who was already nervous, to concentrate. Emerald green seed bombs flew out, but they were easily evaded by Monferno's dexterous jumps. A layer of cold sweat immediately appeared on the youth's forehead, and before he could give another order, the Monferno had already splashed high, clenched fists with both hands, and smashed towards him with a white glow. "Get out of the way, dodge away," a voice came from behind. But the young man was already sluggish at this time, obviously frightened by Monferno's madness. His legs were shaking, but it was difficult to move. Seeing that the fierce Fire 2.1 monkey's attack was about to fall on him, a tall figure suddenly ran in front of him. "Garchomp, use Dragon Claw." The soft and crisp voice came out again. I saw Garchomp in front of the young man suddenly groaned. His claws suddenly lit up with white light, and then he slashed forward. The seemingly terrifying Monferno suddenly let out a scream after it collided with it, and then flew out quickly, smashing to the ground with a loud bang. After the smoke cleared, Monferno, who was lying in the center of the pit, struggled to get up again after a while, apparently suffering serious injuries. "Garchomp, use Stomp." The voice came from behind the youth again. When Garchomp suddenly stepped forward, the ground began to vibrate violently, and an invisible wave spread out, knocking Monferno, who had barely stood up, flying out again. This time, the Monferno was not getting up, apparently completely incapacitated by the successive attacks. Seeing this scene, the young man's eyes suddenly showed a touch of shock, and he stared blankly at Garchomp in front of him, his expression extremely excited. At this moment, a figure slowly appeared beside him. It was Cynthia, who felt here just from the Union headquarters. At this time, Cynthia was wearing an iconic long black coat. Her long golden hair was casually scattered behind her, and Garchomp, who had returned to her side, was full of aura. The young man was shocked, and even stuttered when he spoke. You are Lord Cynthia. Are you okay?" Cynthia didn't pay much attention to the shock in the young man's eyes. After a simple question, he turned his solemn gaze to the Monferno in the distance. The wild Pokémon mass attack this time is probably far more than she imagined. This chapter contains pictures. Click the illustration button in the lower right corner of the screen to view the pictures. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. You can read more daily new novels on fictionzone.net. Both sites share the same login details, so you don't need to sign up again. Chapter 70. Before rushing back to the Sinnoh region, she had read about the wild Pokémon attack. Although I had been mentally prepared for a long time, I did not expect this matter to be so strange. The Primeape just now lost its ability to fight after resisting 2 attacks from her ace Garchomp. This is really incredible. You know, with the rewards from the previous Dragon Rank list, after this period of hard work, her Garchomp has successfully stepped into the level of the 3rd level Divine Beast. Although it is still only the primary level of the 3rd level Divine Beast, her strength has improved. Even an elite level Pokémon might not be able to withstand the level of her Garchomp today. In front of him, Primeape, which is still far from the leader level, actually resisted twice. Could it be the reason for the runaway? Cynthia quickly figured out the key. Judging from the information previously obtained, it seems that the Pokémon who attacked Noera City have fallen into a state of rampage, and the red light in Primeape's eyes can also prove this. However, in her impression, the runaway state will only make Pokémon lose his mind, and his desire to attack becomes stronger. When will Pokémon be more resistant? This discovery must be communicated to headquarters. Cynthia thought to herself and looked around again. Today's Noera City has long ceased to be the way it once was. Looking around, there are ruins everywhere. People's exclamations were mixed with the explosions of Pokémon battles, and there were occasional calls for help. "You guys go to the east to support, you guys go to the west, and the rest come with me." Cynthia looked solemn, and even more innocent people were injured with every delay. The immediate priority is to stop the attack first. Just in case, She brought all the most superior members in the alliance, and each of them possessed near-leader-level strength, just to deal with this situation. As for the young man, he went to the rear under Cynthia's order. In addition to the superiors who followed her, the remaining superior members had built a line of defense there, as well as medical staff temporarily recruited from other regions to help the people who were attacked in E13 Yuan City. After arranging these, Cynthia dared to move forward immediately. Wild Pokemon have completely invaded the city. Every 2 steps you can see a binocular red Pokemon, either wandering around looking for traces of humans or fighting a trainer's Pokemon. The only good thing is that these Pokemon are not very strong in their own right. The reason why Noera City's trainers can be unstoppable is mainly due to its great fighting ability. In front of Cynthia, who is the champion, there is no storm at all. Resisting 1 hit and 2 hits isn't fundamentally different. For the sake of first aid, in order to quickly end the battle, she basically shot herself. Under her command, Garchomp, who had been promoted to the 3rd level god, continued to attack, and those wild Pokemon who ran wild didn't even have a chance to resist and fell completely in the tragic growl. Lord Cynthia seems really angry. This is the first time there has been such a large-scale Pokemon attack. She was born in the Sinnoh region, and now the whole city of Noera has been destroyed. It is certain to be angry. I don't know how these Pokemon turned out like this, even if we are afraid it will be difficult to defeat in a short time. Several Alliance superiors behind Cynthia were shocked by her thunderous tactics, and they didn't even have a chance to make a move from beginning to end, so they could only follow behind to clean up the mess. Those Pokemon who were defeated by Cynthia were imprisoned by them one by one, and they can only be released after confirming that they are no longer berserk after awakening. The severity of the attack exceeded all expectations. After just walking a block, the containers for those defeated Pokemons have run out. This means that the number of wild Pokemon that attack Noera City is probably in the hundreds, maybe even more. Garchomp, use Takedown to pick up Dragon Claw. Cynthia spoke again, followed Garchomp straight out, slammed into a rampant Grotle in front of him, and then slashed out with both claws, which soon completely disabled the latter's ability to move. Looking at the back, the Alliance member responsible for replenishing the storage container has not returned, and Cynthia's expression not only became solemn again, but turned to look forward. This is already the outskirts of Noera City, and there is a dense jungle ahead. There are quite a few Alliance superiors that follow her this time, and they are basically enough to deal with the wild Pokemon in the city. And her more important purpose is to figure out the source of these Pokemon runaways. Obviously, the rampant Pokemon in the city today all came from the dense forest ahead. It shouldn't be from Team Magma or Team Aqua, and it's unlikely the Plasma Core. Is it Team Galactic? Cynthia pondered in her heart, not sure for a while. After hesitating for a moment, she immediately walked forward with Garchomp and several Alliance superiors. In the lush forest, there was a dead silence, except for the crisp sound of people stepping on the fallen leaves. There was no movement at all. Weirdly worrying. They didn't know how long they had traveled until they noticed something else. It was a Piku curled up in the bushes. At this time, he was holding his small head in pain. There were still strands of thunder arcs fanning on his body, and he seemed to be unable to control his own strength. Cynthia frowned, and just as she was about to approach, a slightly frightened voice suddenly came out from her subordinates. "Cynthia, Lord, look over there." Turning to look, in the direction the superior team member pointed, dozens of Primeape with red eyes were standing quietly on the branches staring at them, looking fierce, as if they would pounce on them in the next second. "Garchomp." Cynthia spoke in a deep voice, and Garchomp, who was 2 or 3 meters tall, immediately blocked in front of her and glanced at the Primeape fearlessly. "Use Sandstorm." A cold voice came out. With a faint light on Garchomp's body, the fallen leaves of the woods suddenly began to fly. There is a strong wind, howling the mountains and forests, and flying sand and rocks. But in just a few breaths, a terrifying sandstorm took shape, and the Primeape on the trees in the distance were shrouded in it. Even the nearest big trees were affected, and they rose up instantly under the terrifying storm and fell into the sandstorm. The Alliance superiors following Cynthia all showed shocking expressions and stared blankly at this scene. After being promoted to the 3rd level god, Garchomp's strength has been greatly improved than before, and it is not an exaggeration to say that it has changed qualitatively. The terrifying sandstorm lasted for a long time before gradually dissipating. As the smoke and dust disappeared, the trees and bushes in that area had already been completely destroyed, and the dozens of Primeape were also completely unconscious at the moment, lying in a pile. After seeing this scene, several Alliance superiors breathed a sigh of relief. and at the same time looked at Cynthia with more respect. At this time, Cynthia's face was not very good-looking, and her eyes were fixed on the sky in the distance. Perhaps it was because large tracts of trees were destroyed and there was no shelter, or perhaps it was motivated by the power of sandstorm. At this time, there were wisps of mist in the extreme distance of the Tiangong. Those mists are extremely hazy and hard to detect without looking closely, but there is a strange power in them. Even though there is still a lot of distance, it still makes Cynthia feel a sense of unease. In addition to this feeling, there is some inexplicable familiarity. It was as if he had encountered it before. Cynthia felt a bit of vigilance in her heart and continued to move forward with a few people. Along the way, they encounter a number of Pokemon who are caught in a frenzy. It seems that the Pokemon in the surrounding area of Noera City are going berserk. If Cynthia, who is the champion, has not come in person, it is impossible for these Alliance superiors to penetrate into the depths of the woods. Too many rampaging Pokemon. All the way down, the Pokemon that fell into Garchomp's hands has exceeded hundreds. Even so, those Pokemon show no signs of running out. The strangest thing is that even if Garchomp releases the breath of his third-level Divine Beast, he can't scare him away. To know, under normal circumstances, the breath of Divine Beasts has a very strong suppressing effect on ordinary Pokemon, and even when they fall into a frenzy, they will flee under the drive of instinct. But these wild Pokemons in front of them seem to lack even their instincts, and the only thing left is the desire to attack. After discovering this, Cynthiana's mood became heavier, but she continued to move forward with a few people. After an unknown amount of time and how many violent Pokemon she defeated, she finally reached the front of the fog. In the distance is a huge lake deep in the jungle, now shrouded in a haze. The mist was scattered, and a large area near the lake was shrouded in it. And this is still more obvious to the naked eye, and it is only the range of thick fog. After seeing this scene, the Alliance superiors all showed their doubts and looked deep into haze, without noticing that, beside them, Cynthia's face gradually showed shock. There is a touch of disbelief. How is this possible? This power, why does it appear here? Cynthia muttered to herself, and her body instinctively took a step backward. When she saw haze from afar, she had a vague sense of familiarity in her heart, and as she got closer now, she finally remembered the source of that familiarity. In the laboratory of the Pokemon Alliance headquarters, the aura emanating from the black strange substance brought by Lance was exactly the same as the haze in front of him. The black mass also emits haze, and once infected, the weaker Pokemon will go berserk for a short period of time. At that time, Lance once said that the Pokemon who fell into a rage only knew fighting and killing, and would have a strong ability to fight and become extremely tenacious. Everything is the same as what he has discovered today. The same spooky vibe, the same haze, can throw Pokemon into a frenzy. Thinking of this, Cynthia's expression became extremely solemn. As a League executive, she knows where these hazes come from. Has the prophecy been fulfilled so soon? Those things, have they come to this world? Thinking of this possibility, even in her status, she could no longer remain calm. I saw that she turned her head to look at the several Alliance superiors who had come with her, with a serious expression that had never been seen before. You guys go back first, immediately report what you found here to the Alliance headquarters, and also tell the President that the legendary prophecy may be fulfilled. 633. The priority of this matter is above everything else, and the message must be delivered in the shortest possible time. Several people looked at each other and seemed a little hesitant. Lord Cynthia, what about you? You don't have to worry about the rest, just do as I say. Yes. The aura of being a champion spread, and those few people didn't dare to hesitate any longer at this moment, and immediately turned around and left here. As for Cynthia, Garchomp was first put away, and then another Pokeball was taken out from the waist. As the red light surged, a Braviary suddenly appeared in front of her. She was going to the depths of haze, above the lake, to confirm the source of these hazes. It must be done, even if such an act may entail great risk. It's about the safety of the whole world. If those beings really come again, then the severity of the matter will probably be raised by several levels. Let's go. Cynthia spoke in a deep voice, and then patted Braviary who was under her body, who immediately flew forward with a flutter of wings. Huge wings swept through the air, causing haze in a small area to churn. As it goes deeper, haze also becomes more intense, and the visibility decreases rapidly. Under the rapid flight of Braviary, it didn't take long for her to reach the top of the lake. At this time, the visibility of the surrounding area has been reduced to 3 or 4 meters, and only the hazy haze can be seen further away. The surroundings were terrifyingly dead, and only the sound of Braviary's wings could be heard. Just as Cynthia sank and searched around, a violent splash of water suddenly broke the dead silence. It was a Gyarados with red eyes, with a huge body in front of it, like a hill. Braviary, use air slash. Cynthia obviously expected it long ago, and did not show the slightest panic, and issued an order the moment Gyarados appeared. One after another, invisible sharp blades cut through haze, and in an instant they were in front of the Gyarados. The latter's reaction was only half a beat slower, and it was difficult to dodge the blow. After being hit, he immediately fell back into the lake. Use air slash again. Cynthia is well aware that a single blow won't fix these runaway Pokemon. As another air slash fell into the water, and the lake was completely silent, she was relieved and then turned her eyes to the front. This is already the center of the lake. Under the stirring of the air just now, haze dispersed briefly, and she also saw something else. That's a crack. A space crack spanning several meters across the lake. Thank you for reading this story at mtelarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. Chapter 71. This is... Cynthia's complexion changed slightly. The large black mist on the lake in front of me was spilling out from the crack in that space. Looking around, the crack is deep and deep, like a bottomless abyss. Just looking at it from a distance, there is a feeling of being sucked into it. And this feeling is exactly the same as the feeling that Haze gave her when she watched Chen's battle video. Cynthia sank, glanced at Braviary under him, confirmed that the latter had not been affected by Haze, then patted it, and then slowly moved towards the crack. The crack is 4 or 5 meters long, and it is suspended a dozen meters above the lake. It doesn't look like much from a distance. Only after getting close can you feel its horror. It was as if a pair of invisible giant hands ripped apart the space, and the surrounding space was twisted and deformed. There was also a faint, but extremely terrifying aura coming from it, and even the champion-level warrior Condor was afraid, and when it got close to a certain level, it showed a restless color. Even Cynthia's best efforts to reassure her could not bring her back to normal. And this discovery made his heart even more heavy. Braviary felt it, and she felt it too. That breath gave her the feeling that it was even stronger than the colorful Rayquaza displayed on the god list. You know, it is a quasi-creation level existence. They really come back. Cynthia looked at the space crack in the air, and after hesitating for a moment, she still did not choose to act rashly, but left here on the Braviary. In Noera City, under the helping hands of the many Alliance superiors that came, most of the Pokemon who had fallen into a frenzy had been brought under control. Even if there are still a small number of disasters, they have not been able to set off any storms. Under the deployment of the Alliance, the trainers injured in the attack have been properly accommodated, and supplies from various places have begun to arrive in batches. Everything is slowly getting better. However, looking at the relaxed expressions on the faces of those Alliance superiors, Cynthia's heart was not happy at all. She knew very well that the disasters in front of her were probably just the tip of the iceberg. The real disaster has not yet begun. After simply instructing a few Alliance superiors to lead someone to block the road leading to the dense forest, Cynthia hurriedly left Noera City and started heading towards the Alliance headquarters. At this time, people from the outside world are still immersed in the ranking of the gods that appear one by one. The opening of the latest fire rankings has also come to an end. As an attribute of many trainers, the competition in the fire element ranking is far more intense than the previous rankings. I originally thought that the trainers of the dragon and flight types were already miserable, but I didn't expect the competition in the fire category to be so fierce. Ahem, fortunately, I'm not a fire-type Pokemon-based trainer, and even Champions Junior Pokemon can only be ranked out of 15. Looking at this situation, Mr. Chen is probably going to dominate the list again this time. I don't think it's easy to say. There are too many top fire-type Pokemon, and they may have divided up a lot of the positions ahead. Looking at the piles of champion-level Pokemon that have been revealed one after another on the leaderboard, many people have lamented the popularity of the fire department. Meanwhile, at Team Magma headquarters, Maxie looked at the constantly announced rankings, his eyes full of rage and annoyance. Even he did not expect that the ranking of the fire element would be so intense. Although his Camerupt has not been on the list yet, the ranking should be good, but the rankings of the cadres such as Horiang are much worse than expected. You know, the rewards will be different for every lower ranking. After all, the rewards released by the God ranking can create top combat power in a short period of time. I don't know what the status of the water type list is. If the guys at Archie get too many awards, I'm afraid they will ride on our Team Magma in the future. Qi Yinsong supported his forehead with one hand and looked worried. At this time, the list of the fire element ranking has entered the top 10. 10th, Magmortar Current Trainer, Brain Level Strength, Champion Intermediate 8th place. Camerup Current Trainer, Maxi Grade Strength, Champion Senior 4th place. Charizard Current Trainer, Lance Level Strength, Champion Limit 3rd place. NTI Current Trainer, Yichen Level Strength, Level 2 God Intermediate 2nd place. Lava Behemoth, Citarin, Current Trainer, Yichen Level Strength, Level 2 God Intermediate 1st place. Groudon Current Trainer, Yichen Level Strength, the pinnacle of first level gods. After the list was broadcast, the Lava Army, Maxi stood up instantly. His eyes were dead, and the blue veins on his forehead burst out. No, it's impossible. Groudon should have no master. When was he captured? Rage, powerless, suddenly. Complicated emotions flooded into his heart in an instant, and after a while, Maxi slumped down weakly and fell into a sluggishness as he watched the huge figure projected by the gods. At this time, in Team Aqua's headquarters, Archie looked at the huge figure, and panic flashed in his eyes. Even Groudon was taken down? Then will Kyogre also? Impossible. Kyogre is ownerless. Even if Yichun is superhuman, it is impossible to subdue him. Not knowing what he was refuting, Archie kept muttering, only to feel that the building of faith in his heart was a sign of collapse. Compared to the two people's days, the atmosphere in the Pokémon Alliance headquarters was much better. This time, in the fire rankings, 4 of the top 10 belonged to the Alliance champion. With that terrifying reward, in the next short period of time, the strength of the entire Alliance will be qualitatively improved. If the prophecy does come true, they will also have more resistance. I just don't know what's going on with Cynthia. Judging from the news she sent back earlier, it seems that haze has also appeared in Noera City. It may be that black substance has appeared again, and it must be brought back to the Alliance headquarters after confirmation, otherwise it may cause more trouble. I think so too. I'm afraid that the previously prepared laboratory will be expanded, a special department will be established, and the vigilance will be strengthened to avoid any accidents. Professor Oak analyzed in an orderly manner, and all the elite champions, including President Damalanchi, nodded in agreement. This is not a trivial matter, nor is it a waste of resources. Judging from the current situation, that black substance must be strictly guarded, and once it leaks out, it will inevitably cause a lot of riots. Even a little more effort is worth it. Just when everyone was about to discuss the specific details, the door of the conference room was suddenly pushed open. A beautiful figure hurriedly walked in, but it was Cynthia who had previously rushed to Sinnoh region. Seeing her return, everyone swarmed up and asked about the situation in Noera City. After the latter took a deep breath, he immediately stated his findings one by one with a solemn expression. What? The entire Pokémon in the surrounding forests of Noera City were affected? Space cracks? Could it be that the prophecy has really been fulfilled? Are those other dimensional beings coming again? After hearing Cynthia's narration, everyone could no longer remain calm, and everyone was shocked, and their expressions became extremely serious. Even if these things sounded a bit bizarre, they all knew that it was naturally impossible to lie as Cynthia. President, sir, I suggest to organize staff to go to Noera City immediately to check the space crack. I agree. It's very likely a sign that those dark beings are coming, and if you can, it's best to try it and see if you can make the rift disappear. According to what Cynthia said, black mist is still pouring out of the crack. If it cannot be dealt with in time, the affected area may continue to grow, and it may be necessary to consider evacuating the entire Noera City. Everyone opened their mouths one by one. Tamaki frowned and listened, then nodded slowly. Alliance emergency dispatch order was issued, so that all elite champions in each region rush to Noera City, and a group of psychic superiors are also called to go together. It's not too late, let's go now. Because that haze was about the existence of darkness that could destroy the world, everyone did not dare to delay, and immediately headed towards Noera City. At the same time, Unova region, Alder frowned as he looked at the communicator in his hand that was rapidly flashing red light. After answering the call, his expression suddenly became awe-inspiring, and he didn't even care about the god list, which was still opening a new list, and immediately left the place. Hoenn region, Galar region, almost at the same time, all elite champions in the major regions received urgent orders from the Alliance headquarters, and they all lost the mood to watch the rankings, and all went to Noera City in the Sinnoh region. Under the League's highest emergency order, it didn't take long for the elite champions of the entire Pokémon League to gather in Noera City. Organize people to transfer all the residents and Pokemon in Noera City. In addition, all roads entering Noera City are blocked, and no one is allowed to enter. After giving the order, Damalangi glanced at the many elite champions and finally settled on Cynthia. The latter immediately understood and brought everyone to the front of the lake where the space crack was found. Compared to the last time she came here, the black mist in this area is obviously a lot denser. Even if it is still on the edge of the lake, the visibility has been reduced to within 5 meters. With each flying-type Pokemon above the elite level shooting at the same time, the black mist covering the entire lake was immediately separated, and everyone was able to see the appearance of the space crack, and they all showed shock. Only Cynthia, with her brows furrowed, stared at the space crack, wondering what she was thinking. Lance noticed her abnormality and frowned. "What's wrong?" "I got a feeling." Cynthia was still staring at the crack, and her expression became more and more solemn. "This crack seems to have expanded a little more than when I came here before." As soon as these words came out, everyone, including the always calm Damalangi, was taken aback. "Crack? Expanding? I can't say for sure either, but it always feels like it's getting bigger." Cynthia shook her head. She didn't measure the length of the crack at that time, but the feeling in her heart was extremely strong. Hearing this, everyone fell silent. If Cynthia's feelings are right, the seriousness of the matter is probably a bit higher. However, this is not the time to care about that. Under the command of Damaki, powerful psychic Pokemon appeared one after another by the lake. Right now, they can't find a way to make the Space Rift restore, Wang Hao disappear, and the only thing they can do is to temporarily block this place by relying on a large number of psychic Pokemon. If haze is allowed to continue to spread, the impact will further increase. Don't look at the scope of haze at this time. On the surface, it only covers this forest, but in fact, even the urban area of Noera City is affected. There are rare hazes entering it. Although they can't be seen, they can also affect the lower-strength Pokemon. If it continues, in less than a day, neighboring cities will also be affected. And that's not counting the wild Pokemon on the way. These hazes must be kept as isolated as possible to give them time to find a solution. The only thing that is fortunate is that there is no other change in the space crack for the time being. This situation made all the elite champions who were ready to fight breathe a sigh of relief. They are all very clear about what they may face once there is a change. Even if they are extremely confident in their own strength, in the face of that kind of existence, it is difficult for even champion to resist. "Let's go. We can't let these cracks spread anymore." Looking at the black air emanating from the crack, Damalan said solemnly to the group of Alliance psychic trainers beside him. These psychic trainers are all superiors in the Alliance Superior, and most of their main Pokemon are on the superpower list. The lowest level is the leader peak level, and the rest are quasi-elite or even elite-level powerhouses. And the reason why the Alliance can emerge so many powerhouses at once is naturally derived from the rewards of the gods. It's the President. Hearing Damalangi's words, led by Steven and Caitlin, a group of Alliance powerhouses with Psychic's main Pokemon released their own Pokemon, ready to seal the cracks. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. You can read more daily new novels on fictionzone.net. Both sites share the same login details, so you don't need to sign up again. Chapter 72. Alakazam, Hypno, Slowbro. Hundreds of powerful psychic Pokemon gathered on the edge of the lake, and as the top trainers spoke, a blue light suddenly shot into the sky. It was one after another spiritual confusion, which immediately condensed everything after meeting in mid-air. Although it is still not as good as the confusion that exists like Mutwo, it is still extremely powerful. Wherever it passes, even the space is slightly distorted. Damalangi and the others took a step back, looking at the huge confusion nervously. The thick confusion beam of light stopped in an instant, and soon reached the surrounding of the space crack. For a time, the small cracks that spread around the cracks were vague signs of recovery. Efficient. Everyone's heart is full of joy, and those psychic Pokemon are also increasing their output at this moment. The terrifying confusion continued to gather, and even other things in this area were affected. The fallen leaves on the ground began to fly one after another, and even water droplets continued to rise from the lake, which looked extremely strange, as if the gravity of the world had disappeared. However, at this time, everyone was not in the mood to pay attention to these, and all their attention was focused on the space crack. With the continuous influx of powerful confusion, the huge crack suddenly started to squirm. Although those small branches disappeared a little, the crack itself did not change at all. Maybe confusion isn't strong enough, folks. Allen was about to speak again, when suddenly, the huge space crack in the Tiangong began to tremble uncontrollably. The terrifying power of space distorted some of the surrounding areas in an instant, and all the shrouded confusion seemed to fall into an invisible vortex and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. The tremors of the cracks continued to intensify, and even those small branches that had been restored before reappeared in an instant, and they also increased a little. Cracks are expanding. Under the horrified gaze of everyone, it was as if a pair of invisible giant hands were pulling, and the cracks suddenly increased from 5 or 6 meters in length to 7 or 8 meters. Although from a distance, this change is not particularly big, but everyone is very clear about the meaning. Master President, with our current capabilities, I'm afraid we can't make this crack disappear. Everyone, please block off this area as much as possible. Even if we can't make the space crack disappear, we can't let these haze continue to spread. 633. Damarachi's voice was heavy. This is no way. Since the cracks cannot be repaired, then control haze and buy as much time as possible. With the joint efforts of many top psychic Pokemon, a huge confusion barrier quickly rose around the lake, isolating the entire area. Although this approach can temporarily stop haze's drive to continue to spread, the worry on everyone's faces has become more intense. This is nothing more than a delaying strategy to treat the symptoms rather than the root causes. I don't know how long this barrier will last. If the cracks continue to expand, I'm afraid we can only dispatch some more psychic trainers. There is some kind of power in these hazes, and the barrier may only be able to withstand it for a day or two. Before this matter is over, Noera City can no longer stay alone. Just in case, it is best to evacuate some civilians in the neighboring regions. Everyone continued to discuss, and as soon as the voice fell, an Alliance superior rushed over in a hurry. Master President, it's not good. The news just came from Alliance headquarters that there is an emergency situation of wild Pokemon mass attack in Fortree City in the Hoenn region, Isira City in the Unova region, and Vermilion City in the Kanto region. The leaders of the local region have sent urgent requests for help. The man spoke out of breath. After Damalanki and others heard it, their expressions became more and more solemn. After some deliberation, many elite champions immediately divided into several groups. Except for Cynthia, who wanted to stay here temporarily and continue to observe the movement of the crack, the rest of the people rushed to the places where the incident occurred in batches. Unable to restore the crack, they can only try their best to suppress the chaos, reduce the impact of the crack, and speed up the search for Yi-Chen's sleeping place. The entire Pokemon League is getting busy. Various personnel movements, from superior trainers to paramedics, began to rush towards the region where chaos erupted. Meanwhile, somewhere in the world, inside the huge palace, Rayquaza, who was still talking to Mutwo about ancient things, seemed to sense something, and an incomparably powerful force suddenly surged out of his body. Mutwo was taken aback by this sudden change, and under the pressure of the quasi-creation level, even with its strength, it was forced to take a half-step back. What happened? It was clear that Rayquaza must have sensed something, and it is definitely not a trivial matter that can make it produce such a big reaction. The terrifying aura lingered for a long time, and then Rayquaza gradually calmed down. After hearing Mutwo's voice, he spoke with a solemn expression. Yi-Chen's prophecy came true. I feel the power of those things spreading and reviving. Those guys are coming back again. Hearing this, Mutwo was stunned for a moment, and then quickly reacted, and her expression also became extremely solemn. In the previous narration of Rayquaza, it already knew the secrets that happened in ancient times. The so-called guys refer to the dark demons. Now Yi-Chen is nowhere to be seen, let alone it. Even the colorful Rayquaza with quasi-create level strength is not necessarily all those existing opponents. Once those existences really come, waiting for the whole world, I am afraid only perish. Can you feel how long before they arrive? It opened his mouth with a heavy expression, but Rayquaza just shook his head slowly. The gap between the two dimensions has been opened, and their power aura has penetrated into this world, but I can't calculate the specific time of their arrival. As soon as its voice fell, deep in the hall, a pink light suddenly lit up. Rayquaza and Mutwo looked in that direction at the same time, and saw the red light flickering in the air, and the next moment it appeared in the center of the hall. The moment he saw the figure, Mutwo's eyes showed a little surprise. Mew? It did not expect that Mew is actually in this hall. Rayquaza seemed a lot calmer. After Mew was seriously injured, it brought him to sleep in this hall, and now he finally woke up. After waking up, Mew didn't notice the existence of Mutwo, or didn't care, but flew to Rayquaza for the first time. Where's Yi-Chen? Is he in this hall? Is he waiting for me? No, there is no breath of him here. Rayquaza, tell me quickly, where is Yi-Chen? The small-sized Mew flew in the air, constantly dodging around Rayquaza, his tone full of eager anticipation. It seems that your memory has been restored. Rayquaza spoke slowly. After the battle that year, except for the one with the best preserved strength, the other divine beasts that followed Yi-Chen were all remembered by Imprison. Mew is in it too, but now it seems that the latter has obviously remembered everything. Listening to Rayquaza's nonsensical answer, Mew became more and more anxious, and the speed of his flight increased a lot, almost flickering. I remember nothing. Did you hide Yi-Chen? Did he not want me? Mew spoke more and more urgently, and tears gradually flashed in a pair of bright and clear eyes. Mutwo, who already knew everything, stood quietly not far away, with a complicated expression, only to feel that an inexplicable emotion was spreading in her heart. And Rayquaza just let out a long sigh. Yi-Chen is still sleeping. Impossible. You're lying to me, aren't you, BDCB? Rayquaza, you've never lied before. Mew flew in front of Rayquaza. His big eyes kept flickering, staring at Rayquaza, as if trying to see through its lies. I remember everything what Yi-Chen said. He will definitely wake up and come back. You can't lie to me. It held its head high and didn't care about the difference in body size between the two. It showed a proud look, indicating that it had already detected everything. Rayquaza didn't argue, just stared back at it. Inside the huge palace, there was a dead silence. Time passed silently. A trace of panic began to appear in Mew's eyes. It didn't find the information it wanted in Rayquaza's eyes, but only saw a deep sadness and nostalgia. It also made it realize that what Rayquaza said was true. Yi-Chen hasn't come back yet. Tears flickered in Mew's eyes again, and the psychic in his body began to spread out continuously because of his emotional instability. 90,000 years. Fraud. Yi-Chen is a liar. It murmured constantly, and the swaying tail behind it also pulled down at this moment, looking listless. He clearly said that he will definitely come back. With the recovery of his memory, Mew already knew everything that happened 90,000 years ago, and also knew why his memory was captured by Imprison. If Yi-Chen hadn't personally assured them that he would come back, he wouldn't agree to be remembered by Imprison anyway. But why did Yi-Chen lie to it? Mew doesn't understand. It remembered that Yi-Chen of Zongjin, no matter what he said, he would definitely do it, not let them down, let alone lie to them. But 90,000 years have passed. Even for it, 90,000 years is an extremely long time. But now, Yi-Chen still hasn't woken up. It didn't want to believe it, and its small head shook constantly, and it gradually calmed down after a long sound. No, Yi-Chen will definitely do what he said. He must have come back, but somewhere else. I'm going to find him. No matter where he is in the ends of the earth, I will definitely find him. Mew kept mumbling, his eyes gradually becoming firmer. As the pink light overflowed from its body, it suddenly flourished, and the next moment, its figure disappeared in the hall. Rayquaza looked silently at the place where Mew disappeared, with a deep sadness in his eyes. It was also difficult to accept. 90,000 years had passed, but Yi-Chen still did not wake up. But as the most stable of the many mythical beasts, it is very clear that if Yi-Chen wakes up, he will definitely come to this palace first. And the most important thing for it is to protect the world for Yi-Chen before he returns. In addition to it, Mutwo's expression at this time is also quite complicated. It never thought that a human being could have such an important position in the hearts of these divine beasts. The feeling in its heart seemed to be a little clearer, but it was still difficult to explain. In the end, it just looked at the throne at the top of the hall with emotion. At the same time, Indigo Plateau, inside the champion arena. Unlike the already busy Pokemon League, most people's attention is still on the ever-opening god list. It's outrageous. I now seriously doubt that Mr. Yi-Chen is really human. Cough. Each list has so many beasts to dominate the list. How many rewards should there be? If you give me a little bit, I am afraid I have a chance to become the champion. Remember the mythical beast that appeared just now? Damn it. My Psyduck was scared back into the Pokeball. The crowd continued to discuss, and their faces were full of shock. The opening of the all-attribute list gave everyone a new understanding of Yi-Chen's strength. The top positions in all the lists were all occupied by Yi-Chen's mythical beasts without exception, and the most important thing was that there were even many people who had never even heard of them. And these existences, without exception, are extremely powerful, even enough to be compared with the colorful Rayquaza. Zygarde, who occupied the top spot on the ground-based rankings, had a quasi-create level strength that stunned everyone the moment he appeared. There is also the top of the poison list. Eternatus, who has just appeared, is also a quasi-creation level existence. The dragon-like body stretched across the heavenly palace, enveloping almost the entire champion arena, and under the diffusion of the black and purple aerosol, many people's Pokémon were shivering with fright. And this was just an image, and it was also just the tip of the iceberg among Yi Chen's many mythical beasts. I prefer Xerneas to Zygarde. Cut. No vision. Obviously Giratina is the most domineering. Solgaleo is so handsome. If I had such a divine beast, I would never touch a woman in my life. Is there really such a mythical beast as Regice? It seems incredible. From the original expectation of their own ranking, to the discussion of the various rare beasts that have appeared, everyone has even become accustomed to it and began to discuss the best in their hearts. Of course, this is just what most ordinary people think. In the Team Aqua base, Archie was sitting on a chair, clenching his fists tightly. His entire arm was shaking slightly due to the excessive force. Kyogre, I was actually taken over by him. Yi Chen, who the hell are you? Archie frowned, not even realizing that his subordinates were already in front of him. Boss. There is another movement on the Pokémon Alliance side. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. Chapter 73. Say it directly. Archie's face was very bad, and he didn't even look at the man. The latter's reaction was also astute, knowing that he was in a bad mood, and said quickly, My subordinates found that the Alliance suddenly changed frequently, and many elites and even champions in the regions took action, along with a large number of superior personnel, as if something major happened. Elite champions are out? Archie frowned. Being able to become the leader of a party, he naturally has a clear priority. After hearing this, he immediately suppressed his emotions. Do you know their purpose? They were originally transferred to a place called Noira City in the Sinnoh region, but that region has now been completely blocked, and they can't get in at all. I only know that the citizens of Noira City seem to be being transferred. Block the region and transfer citizens. Archie's brows furrowed even tighter. He knew very well that it had to be a big deal for the Pokémon Alliance to make such a decision. You must know that it is not easy to transfer the citizens of an urban area, which will involve a lot of trouble. What's more, the fact that the Pokémon League actually transferred all elite champions away at the juncture of the opening of the Gods list shows that things may be far bigger than everyone imagined. Could it be that they found Yi Chen? The thought popped into his mind instantly, but then shook his head again. If that's the case, it might make sense to call elite champions, but it doesn't make sense to move citizens. Send people to go, and all the hidden lines we buried are also called. Anyway, make sure to figure out what the Pokémon League is doing. Yes. After the man responded respectfully, he hurriedly left the place. And the same scene happens all over the world. In Team Magma, Chi Yensong listened to his subordinate's report and tapped the table with his right index finger. Call Fire Hokage and the others. This matter must be clarified. With such a big movement, the guys from the Pokémon Alliance may have discovered something extraordinary. Plasma Cluster. After learning about the actions of the Pokémon Alliance, Kuei-Chi also immediately summoned the superior cadres in the country. After discussions, he sent them all out to find out the reasons behind everything. For a time, the whole world began to undercurrent. Teams of superior trainers from all major forces began to travel around the world, carrying out their respective orders. And the vast majority of ordinary people are not aware of all this, and only a few have heard a little bit of wind. Hey, did you hear that? There seems to be a Pokémon attack on humans in Tree City. Why don't I know? The League has not released relevant information. This time, the attack seems to be quite serious, and similar incidents seem to have occurred in other regions. Even the League champion has been dispatched. Forget it. Well, the Alliance will definitely handle these things. Compared to this, I am more concerned about whether I can have a place in the last list. Some people keep gossiping about the latest news, and some people scoff at it, feeling that there is no need to worry about it. After all, the efficiency of the Pokémon Alliance has always been extremely high, and every time there is a riot in a region, it will be suppressed in a short period of time. Rather than making random guesses now, it is better to pay attention to the list of gods first, and the Alliance will naturally announce what happens at that time. And this is the state of mind of most people. The list is now nearing its end. Only the list of the last general department has not yet been announced. In the voice of everyone's discussion, as the golden light on the god list began to evolve again, The ranking of the general department list also slowly appeared in everyone's sight. 100th place, Snorlax current trainer, Bindo level strength, leader peak ranking reward, quasi-elite berry asterisk 2 plus perfect quality sky plate 31st, Dunsparce current trainer, poly level strength, quasi-elite advanced ranking reward, champion berry plus elite berry asterisk 2 second place, Regigigas current trainer, Echon first place, Arceus current trainer, Echon level strength, creation god level ranking rewards. General Slate legend has it that the Pokemon was born from the void and then created the entire world. As a Sintra-like Pokemon appeared above the champion arena, everyone was stunned for a while. Even if it was just a phantom, terrifying power still swept the entire arena. Compared with it, the existences such as the colorful Rayquaza that have appeared in the past are quite inferior. The Pokemon who created the world, my god. Is this the creator god? The existence that can even create the world. How did Yi-Chun conquer it? Everyone who had already been numbed by the beasts on the major lists was once again shocked when Arceus appeared. This is a truly supreme existence. Even if the gods list shows only influence, everyone still feels its power and terror. This is true god. The colors of shock and admiration showed on everyone's faces, and everyone who saw this scene fell into sluggishness. It was at this moment that the voice of the gods came out again. The list of 18 attributes has all been announced. Due to the abnormal content of the list, the god list will be checked. Check, results will be announced in an hour. With the sudden sound, the light curtain covering the sky disappeared in an instant. Everyone in the champion arena was taken aback. Looking up, the rankings had returned to normal, and a countdown was displayed above. The content of the list is abnormal? Is it possible that the ranking is wrong? I guess it's the same. A Pokemon at the level of the creator god, who can even create the world. How could he be subdued by a human being? Maybe the list of gods is really wrong, so it makes sense. So many god beasts have been subdued by a human being. No matter how you look at it, it doesn't make sense. The list is abnormal? Could it be because of Yi-Chun? It's better that this person doesn't exist at all. In this case, wouldn't I have a chance to conquer Solgaleo? Wake up, even if Yi-Chun really doesn't exist, can you conquer that kind of divine beast? Under the last sound of the god list, the entire champion arena, and even all over the world, exploded and began to discuss. The list is abnormal, but it is much easier for them to accept, mainly because the information on the leaderboard is too exciting. There are a total of 18 lists, and the capitals of all the lists are occupied by the same person. Whether it is the beasts that have been heard of or not, they are almost all followers of that person. What's even more outrageous is that even the creator god Arceus has appeared. They would rather believe that the omnipotent god list in front of them is wrong in statistics, and they can't believe that all this is true. And holding the same idea, there are also the leaders of underground organizations such as Team Aqua, Team Magma, and Plasma Core. If there is really a problem with the list, it means that I still have a chance. At Team Magma headquarters, Chi Yinsong's eyes flashed brightly, and the whole person immediately got rid of the previous decadent rage. In Team Aqua, Archie was also excited at this time. I just said that with a human being, no matter how special it is impossible to get the approval of so many divine beasts, let alone even the handed-down gods. We still have a chance. As long as we can control Kyogre, we can achieve our ultimate goal. His voice was arrogant and passionate, and he didn't know whether he was inspiring those subordinates or inspiring himself. And also surprised by the godless tips, there are also a group of elite champions of the Pokemon Alliance. It's just that, unlike these underground organizations, although the top leaders of the Alliance at this time were equally shocked and puzzled, they didn't have time to think about it carefully. As the chairman, Dan Allen has returned to the headquarters of the Alliance at this time, responsible for the overall command and rationally deploying the human resources of all parties. With him came Lance. As the strongest player in the league, Lance, who has received a lot of rewards in the new list, is now trying to improve his strength as much as possible. The reason why he stayed at the headquarters was to be able to rush to the headquarters as soon as possible when unexpected events that were difficult to deal with occurred around the world. It looks like a lot of pressure, but at least for now, he should be the easiest one. With space rifts popping up everywhere, the other elite champions have their hands full at the moment. Sinnoh region, Noera City. Cynthia was standing in the distance of the lake where the space crack appeared, with a solemn expression. In front of her, within a huge azure light curtain, endless haze is surging frantically, looking rather terrifying. How about the evacuation of personnel? Cynthia spoke suddenly and asked a staff member next to her. The latter immediately returned respectfully. Civilians in the entire Noera City have been completely evacuated. In addition, according to your request, the blockade has also been expanded by 10 kilometers, 4 flowers. It's just that due to the overly large warning range, the number of teams responsible for dispersing wild Pokemon in this area is not enough, and the process is only halfway through now. As expected, it will take at least half a day to disperse completely. Half a day, Cynthia muttered something, looking at the confusion mask in front of her, her eyes full of unconcealed worry. What about the trainer with psychic Pokemon? How many came this time? The person in charge of the report showed an embarrassed expression, and after a while, he gritted his teeth. There is news from the headquarters that there have been spatial cracks in 3 regions not long ago, and now there are no psychic trainers available in the headquarters. Not only that, the headquarters is still asking us if we can send 2 psychic trainers over there. As he spoke, he carefully glanced at Cynthia's expression, for fear that the latter would get angry. However, after hearing this, Cynthia did not show the slightest anger, just sighed silently. The only people currently sitting in the headquarters are Damalangi and Lance. She knew very well that since she would make such a request to them, it meant that the situation in other regions might be far worse than expected, even to the verge of being unmanageable. The psychic trainer can't be mobilized. The confusion barrier is on the verge of collapse. Once someone leaves, the entire barrier will dissipate. Transfer the personnel responsible for evacuating civilians back to headquarters for support. 0 yes. The man replied without hesitation, turned around and left, leaving only Cynthia staring at Hayes in the barrier, wondering what he was thinking. At the same time, southwest of Kanto region, Fuchsia City. In the Buddy Park, Bill was sitting on a bench, looking at the Pokemon and humans walking or playing in front of him, his face full of smiles. Grandpa, do you think that Pokemon like Arceus really exist in this world? Maybe it really does. I heard your great-grandfather say a similar legend in the past. It's just that you finally came back from Johto to see me, an old man, and you didn't care about your grandfather first? Beside him, an old man had a smile on the corner of his mouth, but there was a look of anger on his face. Bill immediately smiled awkwardly and was about to say something to defend himself when the bench under him started to shake, and the magnitude was still increasing. This is earthquake? Bill was startled and almost instinctively helped his grandfather beside him. In the partner park, other people also felt the violent vibration under their feet, and they all ran towards the open space with panic on their faces. Panic shouts of growl everywhere. Fortunately, this vibration did not last long, and before everyone could respond, the vibration disappeared. People who recovered from the astonish looked around. Some were checking if there were any injuries, and some were looking for the reason for the incident. At this moment, a huge roar suddenly came from the sky, as if something exploded. Then, under the comments of countless people and Pokemon, a huge crack appeared in the sky of the partner park. The crack is more than 10 meters long, dark and deep, as if leading to an endless abyss. What is that? What happened? Why did this kind of thing suddenly appear? Hurry up and report to the Pokemon League. Some people panicked, and some relatively calmly took out communication tools at the first time, preparing to report the matter to the Alliance. Just as everyone's eyes were attracted by the crack, in the depth of the crack, strands of black mist began to fly out. Because of the lightness, most people didn't notice it. After a while, roars suddenly sounded in the partner square. A red-eyed Nidoking snorted hot air from his nose, and after scanning the surroundings, Ran rushed towards the owner beside it. Nidoking, what's wrong with you? As soon as the panicked voice came out, the whole person was rushed out, slammed into a tree, and fell into a faint. Before everyone could figure out what happened, another scream came out. Someone's Raichu suddenly became uncontrollable and began to run wild. In the blink of an eye, several people around were stunned. Then, Sandslash, Vulpix, Growlithe. More and more Pokemon suddenly lost control, but in just 10 seconds, the entire partner park fell into chaos. So, this chapter contains pictures. Click the illustration button in the lower right corner of the screen to view the pictures. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. Chapter 74. Pokemon League Headquarters. Allen, who was looking at the materials sent from various regions, looked extremely solemn at the moment, wondering what he was thinking. At this moment, a figure suddenly rushed in. President, Fuchsia City in Kanto region just sent a distress message, and a space crack appeared in the sky above the partner square. This time, the space crack is bigger than before, and the diameter has reached 10 meters. What? Hearing this, Damek was awakened from his deep thoughts, and quickly looked at the man. Immediately mobilize the trainers in the surrounding region to support and evacuate the crowd as soon as possible. It's too late. The man shook his head. That space crack appeared too suddenly, and it is still in the partner square where Pokemon is the most concentrated in the urban area. Now the situation is out of control. As of the time of the call for help, more than 200 Pokemon have been affected by haze. Hearing this, Damalanki's brows furrowed tightly, and after a moment of contemplation, he immediately left the conference room without looking back. After a while, a figure riding a Dragonite quickly rushed out of the Alliance headquarters and disappeared at the end of the sky. And at the same time, inside Fuchsia City. With the appearance of space cracks, today's Fuchsia City has been completely messed up. Even if the Alliance branch in this region has tried its best to maintain order and speed up the evacuation of the masses, it is only a drop in the bucket. At this time, the partner square has been completely shrouded in haze, and the surrounding buildings have also been destroyed. Pokemon's roars and people's screams and calls for help can be heard everywhere. Boom! A series of dull noises came out, and a red onyx with two eyes suddenly emerged from the ground, and when it hit, a 3-story building on the ground collapsed with a bang. The people who didn't have time to escape didn't even let out a scream, and were buried by gravel and smoke. Bill looked at all this with horror on his face, and hurriedly helped his grandfather to go out of the city. Some people are unwilling to flee, and after encountering a violent Pokemon, they did not choose to escape, but summoned their own Pokemon. A Kingler appeared from the red light, and the key in his hand kept opening and closing, making a rushing sound. In front of it is a one-horned rhino in a frenzy. To you, Kingler, use the bubble beam. Kingler's master spoke in a deep voice, with no fear in his eyes. Obviously, he was very confident in his Pokemon. However, following his instructions, Kingler in front of him had no intention of doing so, and was still constantly opening and closing his pliers. After a while, Kingler turned around and turned to look at its owner. At this time, its eyes have also become scarlet. Giant Kingler, what's wrong with you? There was a hint of fear in the man's eyes, and at the same time he spoke with a trembling voice. The whole person instinctively took a step back. Kingler didn't respond to what he meant. After a while, countless tiny bubbles burst out of his mouth. It was Bubble Beam. It's just that the target of the attack has become his own master. After seeing this scene, the only trace of luck in his heart disappeared. He instinctively put his arms in front of him, and then closed his eyes in despair. 1 second. 2 seconds. The bubble beam didn't fall on him. Only a loud noise came out. The man opened his eyes cautiously, and at some point, a huge figure appeared in front of him. Quick, Dragonite? There was a look of joy in his eyes, and after seeing the figure around Dragonite, that joy turned into shock and excitement. Lance-sama, are you here to save us? Get out of here now. The person who came was Lance, who had just arrived here from the Alliance headquarters. Ignoring the man's excited expression, after explaining in a cold voice, he looked forward. At the same time he landed here, he had already dealt with the Kingler, but the movement caused by it also attracted a lot of Pokemon who were in a frenzy around him. After seeing this scene, coupled with Lance's order, the man didn't dare to delay any longer, and hurriedly used the Pokeball to put away the fainted Kingler, and then fled here. Strange to say, perhaps sensing the threat of Lance, the Berserk Pokemon ignored his existence and only surrounded the former. Looking at the more and more Pokemon gathered around, Lance's eyes did not show the slightest panic, but just took out a Pokeball again. Come out, Charizard. As the red light flickered, a scorching heat spread out towards the surroundings. Under the reward of the god list, his Charizard has also broken through the limit and has the strength of a 3rd-level god. Although these Berserk Pokemon are numerous, they only take a little more time in front of the 3rd-level gods Charizard and Dragonite. In normal times, in such an urban center, he might have to be a little more careful so as not to accidentally injure others, but now this situation is obviously unnecessary. Dragonite, use Twister. Charizard, use Jet Flame. As 2 orders were issued one after another, in just a few breaths, this area was enveloped by a huge tornado. Under the blessing of the flames in the sky, it finally turned into a flame tornado. The striking red light illuminated half of Fuchsia City, and even the constantly spreading haze was rolled and gathered in the sky above this area. Many people who were escaping noticed this huge movement, and their steps slowed down a lot. I don't know how long it took before the flame tornado slowly dissipated. Dragonite and Charizard guarded both sides of Lance, and not far from them, those Pokemon who had fallen into a frenzy had fainted and fell to the ground. Because of the urgency of the situation, he came alone this time, and naturally had no energy to deal with those Pokemon. It won't be long before the support of the Alliance arrives, and they can handle this. The most important person for him right now is to check the crack. According to the news, the crack that appeared this time is the biggest one so far. He has to figure out the situation first, and then report it, so that the crack can have specific resource allocation. After all, with cracks appearing everywhere, there are already signs of shortage of manpower, and only reasonable distribution can support it as much as possible. Under the support of Charizard and Dragonite, it didn't take long for Lance to enter the core area of haze. The square is now completely shrouded in haze, and as far as the eye can see, the surrounding ground is full of traces of destruction left by the battle. The bustling venue in the past has long since become a ruin, and the smell of burning trees can still be vaguely smelled. Lance looked around and confirmed that there was no sign of the violent Pokemon. Then he looked up at the space crack above, and his face suddenly became solemn. The crack in front of him was 3 times as long as the one in Noera City, reaching nearly 20 meters. In the information for help, the data mention is obviously only 12 or 3 meters. That is to say, in the time when he arrived here after receiving the news, the crack has already expanded by nearly half. Not only is it the largest, but its diffusion speed is the fastest so far. Looking at the crack that was still spewing haze, Lance's heart sank, and he quickly took out his communicator to contact the Alliance headquarters. At this moment, a huge explosion sounded suddenly. Lance was startled, and quickly stopped the movement of his hands and looked up. And after this glance, a shocking expression appeared on his face. In the space crack at this time, a giant claw unexpectedly protruded. Even if it was a 20-meter-long crack, it was barely able to accommodate it. The giant claws were pitch black, covered with scales that shone with metallic luster, and looked as if they were made of fine steel. The huge vibration just now was caused when it passed through the crack in space. Although the claws can barely pass through, its body is obviously larger and cannot pass through the cracks for a while. Looking at this terrifying giant that he had never seen before, even Lance couldn't help but instinctively took a half step back. On that paw, he felt an extremely dangerous breath. Because the main body was still on the other side of the space crack, the claw didn't notice his existence, and after trying hard to get out of the crack, it began to struggle violently. The loud noise of space tearing continued to spread, and with every struggle of the claw, the space crack would instantly expand a few meters. With the collapse of the space, the entire Fuchsia City was affected. The ground began to vibrate violently, and those superiors who were affected by haze gave up their pursuit of humans as if they had been ordered to, and all rushed back towards the partner square. The giant claw is still struggling, and the crack at this time has also expanded to more than 30 meters. Darkness, existence. Seeing the giant claws protruding constantly, Lance didn't dare to hesitate any longer and quickly set the communicator to emergency communication mode. This is the newly developed mode. In this mode, he can force the connection with all the top leaders of the Alliance and synchronize the scene in front of him in real time. At this time, he didn't even have time to wait for communication or even to speak and explain. There is only one thought left in my mind. Never let these beings come to this world. Charizard, use Flare Blitz. Dragonite, use Hyper Beam. Aerodactyl, use Giga Impact. Altaria, use Sky Attack. At this moment, Lance no longer retains any strength. All the Pokemon were summoned by him, and at the same time launched the strongest attack to send the giant claw back into the crack. A terrifying explosion resounded throughout the entire Fuchsia City. Meanwhile, Indigo Plateau, Champion Arena. Although the list of all attributes has completely come to an end, there are still many people who are unwilling to leave, wanting to stay here and see for themselves what the so-called abnormality of the list of gods is. And under their waiting, the countdown to the top of the gods list also completely returned to 0. A golden light suddenly burst out from it and then shot straight into the sky. The voice like a bell resounded in everyone's mind. After checking, the list information is correct. In view of the fact that the top of the list is Chen, an additional reward is hereby issued. Light of the Beginning. The light of the beginning, the first ray of light at the beginning of the birth of heaven and earth, which contains infinite vitality. The golden rays of light evolved into characters, and as the voice of the gods fell, those characters slowly dissipated, and the gods returned to their dead silence again. And after hearing all this, everyone reacted with disbelief. They were still holding a glimmer of hope. If the information on the list is wrong, the biggest possibility is the existence of Chen. But now, after checking the list of gods, it shows that it is correct, which means that such a person really exists. I want to know now, Where is the person who can even conquer the god of creation? I want to worship him as a teacher. Mr. Yi-chan, does it really exist? Ahem, the top of the list. The rewards he gets are probably enough to create a Pokemon alliance. No, it should be stronger. Does anyone know where Mr. Yi-chan is? I have a sister at home. The cauldron exploded again in the champion arena. At this time, in the depths of the universe, on the edge of the starry sky, in a place of nothingness shrouded in endless darkness, a ray of light suddenly appeared out of thin air. That light is very embroidered yarn, as if it came from another world, straight through the endless darkness, and fell on a dim star. Under that ray of light, the starlight gradually became brighter, and after reaching a certain extreme, it began to collapse inward, as if it had been absorbed. A figure appeared. It was a 2.1 youth, hugged in a ball, and seemed to be sleeping. As the star cluster completely disappeared, after the ray of light entered his body, the young man's eyelashes, which had been stagnant for thousands of years, suddenly trembled. I don't know how long it took. He slowly opened his eyes, and there seemed to be endless stars flowing in them, as if he could detect this emptiness. The light of the beginning. The young man stood in the void and muttered to himself, then raised his arms slightly, and 18 slates of different colors appeared in front of him. Maybe this is God's will. He spoke again, and then took a step forward. The next moment, he appeared in front of an extreme darkness. 9,000 years, thank you, Arcus. You should wake up too. As he spoke, the young man gently pushed his hand, and the 18 stone slabs floating beside him flew into the extremely dark place one after another. After a short silence, an incomparably huge aura suddenly spread out and instantly invaded the entire void. As if the universe had just opened, a tiny light appeared in the extreme darkness and then suddenly brightened countless times. Even the starlight in the surrounding star field is all dim at this moment. After a long time, the light gradually disappeared, revealing one of the unicorn-like figures. 18 stone slabs surround it, reflecting it like a god. In other words, it is a god in itself. When the young man saw this figure, a faint smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, and there was a trace of nostalgia in it. It's time to go home. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. Chapter 75. Downtown Fuchsia City, in Partner Park. Lance stared at the front, dark and solemn. As the smoke and dust entered, the huge claws appeared again in sight. The simultaneous attack of the 3 third-level gods and the Pokemon with the limit of many champions only caused some inconspicuous traces to appear on the claws. Not to mention killing the opponent, he couldn't even knock him back into the crack. What are these things? Lance gritted his teeth, then glanced at the communicator in his hand without a trace. The other champions should have seen the situation they are facing at this time, but they don't know how many can get out of it. Although he has always been very confident in his own strength, he also knows that this situation cannot be dealt with by himself. The only thing he can do now is to interfere with that devil claw as much as possible. Not to mention blasting it back into the crack. At the very least, it cannot be allowed to continue to expand the crack. Lance sank and his eyes became sharp again. Dragonite, use Dragon Rush. Charizard, use the Fire Swirl. The huge roar sounded again. At the same time, outside the Partner Plaza, more and more Pokemon who were in a frenzy had rushed over. They seemed to have been summoned by the Devil's Claws, 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside, and the entire Partner Square is surrounded by water like tidal waves. Lance naturally noticed this change, but there was no hint of flinch in his eyes. At the same time, in the headquarters of the Pokemon Alliance, through the screen sharing achieved by Lance, Damalanki, the president, also saw what is happening in Fuchsia City today. Even if it was only affected by the picture, when he saw the huge Devil's Claw, his expression became extremely solemn, and he immediately began to coordinate the champion elite who were scattered in various regions at this time. Except for the region with cracks, a champion must be left behind, and 2 elites are responsible for guarding in case of unexpected events. The rest of the champion elites have been dispatched from the headquarters and rushed to Fuchsia City as soon as possible. Number 13 Original City. Cynthia also saw Lance's situation. Although she was very anxious, she couldn't do anything about it. At this time, she was in charge of guarding Noera City, and she couldn't find the energy to go to support it all. Above the lake, the confusion barrier constructed by many psychic Pokemon was already on the verge of collapse. Among them, haze is like a tsunami, rolling and whistling frantically. She could even feel that the crack covered by the confusion barrier at this time was probably more than twice as big as before. How about the evacuation of the wild Pokemon? She looked at the person in charge beside her and spoke in a deep voice. The man had obviously been running, and after hearing this, he immediately set out of breath. It's 2/3 of the way through, but there is still a serious shortage of manpower. According to the current progress, it will take at least 20 minutes to fully evacuate. 20 minutes? I'm afraid it's too late. Let them expel the stronger Pokemon first to reduce the threat as much as possible, and also notify several nearby cities and let them build a defensive line. As soon as Cynthia's voice fell, the man didn't have time to agree, and suddenly, a violent vibration came out. The earth is shaking. In Noera City, many of the buildings that had been destroyed in the Pokemon battle and became crumbling suddenly collapsed one after another, setting off a cloud of smoke. At this time, Cynthia didn't have time to pay attention to these, and almost instinctively looked into the distance. In the direction of the lake, the confusion barrier, which had already reached its carrying limit, completely collapsed. The dense haze in the sky is like a tsunami, engulfing everything around it at an extremely fast speed. But in just a few breaths, the entire Noera City, including those Alliance superiors, disappeared into haze. And the same scene happens all over the world. For some unknown reason, at the same time, all the space cracks that appeared expanded a lot in a short period of time. Hoenn region, Inu City. Looking at the cracks that suddenly expanded, Stephen felt an extremely bad feeling in his heart. Wallace had already rushed to Fuchsia City to support Lance at this time, and there were many Alliance superiors who went along with them. At this time, the living force left here was far from enough. The proliferation of haze has been unstoppable. Follow the notice. All trainers without leader-level Pokemon will be evacuated to the outermost area and will be responsible for assisting the evacuation of the masses. Others, follow me into haze. The unease in his heart grew stronger. What I fear most now is not that haze continues to spread, but the kind of thing Lance encountered from the crack. He must ensure the safety of the area he guards. Even if you can't blast those things back, at least report the situation as soon as possible. And the same scene happened in every region of the world. With the lessons learned from Fuchsia City, all the champion elites in charge of guarding rushed to the vicinity of their guarding cracks, for fear that a devil's claw would come out. Also at this time, in the headquarters of Team Magma, Chi Yinsong was listening to the report from his subordinates, frowning tightly. Haze that affects Pokemon's mind? Space cracks? In order to find out what the people of the Pokemon Alliance are doing, he used all the intelligence personnel of the entire Team Magma, and the Pokemon Alliance was so busy that he didn't have time to block the news, which also allowed him to learn everything smoothly. However, this result is somewhat different from what I imagined. He thought that something extraordinary happened in the Pokemon Alliance, and maybe even discovered news about Chen, but he didn't expect it to be because of a disaster. It can make the entire league act, and the champion elites are busy running around, which shows that this disaster is unusual. How long have these things been happening? It should have happened not long after the listing of the gods was opened, and it has been almost 2 hours now. According to the latest information, 7 cities including Noera City, Fuchsia City, and Icera City have been completely blocked, and the masses have basically been evacuated. Especially in Fuchsia City, the Pokemon Alliance issued an emergency notice just now, and people in several surrounding cities seem to be evacuating together. It seems that something major has happened. Is it that serious? Chi Yinsong frowned again. He was very aware of the way the Pokemon Alliance gang behaved, and since there were many factors involved in evacuating the masses, he wouldn't do it unless it was absolutely necessary. Now, since the people from 7 cities have been evacuated in one breath, it can be seen that the development of the situation is very likely beyond their control. He looked at the intelligence information just sent in his hand, and suddenly fell into deep thought. Clearly, a cataclysm is about to happen. Although he single-handedly established the underground organization Team Magma, the reason is only for his own ideas and beliefs, to make the land more, so as to make more living space for human beings. What he wants is to change the world, not to destroy it. After all, once the world is destroyed, those people will also disappear. Continue to investigate, and see if we can get any other news. After thinking for a while, Chi Yinsong spoke. There was an uneasy feeling in him. With the complete distribution of the God List, those in the Pokemon Alliance will benefit the most. All the champions of the major regions have a good ranking on the list and have received a lot of rewards. In this case, their strength will inevitably increase greatly. But even so, the big move to evacuate the city can only show that the severity of the disaster may be far beyond everyone's expectations. On the Fuchsia City side, let the Flames and Hokage go for a trip, and even the people in the surrounding region will be evacuated. The situation there must be the most serious. Yes. The man responded respectfully and then hurried out, leaving only Qi Yinsong to tap the table with his index finger, wondering what he was thinking. Meanwhile, Team Aqua headquarters. Unlike Team Magma, Team Aqua's intelligence capabilities are obviously stronger. Under the continuous operation, Archie already knows the cause and effect of everything, including those ancient secrets parsed from ancient ruins, as well as prophecies from tens of thousands of years ago. Dark Demon. Archie muttered to himself, then looked beside him. Quan, what do you think? Boss, this time things are probably really serious. I just received news that people from the Pokemon Alliance have begun to evacuate several cities around Fuchsia City, and elites originally scattered in various regions have also rushed to Fuchsia City. There may have been a so-called dark demon god there. Quan's voice was solemn. In general, they would be overjoyed when they encountered something that would make the Pokemon Alliance suffer, but the current situation was obviously different. From the information they got, they already knew exactly what the so-called dark demon god was. As existences of different dimensions, once they come, they will surely destroy the whole world. And from Chen's battle image, it can be seen how powerful those so-called dark demons are. In the face of that kind of power, even the Pokemon Alliance can hardly resist. This can also explain the mass evacuation of the masses by the latter regardless of the cost and consequences. I'm afraid the situation has gotten so serious that even the Pokemon Alliance can't control it. And all of this happened in just 2 hours. A catastrophe. Archie frowned, and after thinking for a moment, stood up immediately. Call everyone, let's go to Fuchsia City. This world belongs to the ocean, not to those other dimensional bastards. Yes. The members of Team Aqua looked at each other, and all responded with awe. As Archie said, although it has always been called an underground evil organization, their goal is not to destroy the world, but to take back the habitat of Pokemon lost due to human desires. The ocean is the source of all life, and they want to make the ocean cover the world again, and make everything dirty and sickly start again. But if the world is destroyed, all this will naturally be out of the question. At the Plasma Regiment headquarters, Kuei-Chi and En looked at each other, and then stood up at the same time. It didn't take long for the superior cadres of the entire Plasma Regiment to leave the headquarters and start rushing towards the Kanto region. At the same time, Fuchsia City, on Partner Square. Fire-breathing dragon, used the flame vortex. As Lance's voice came out, a red vortex condensed from flames swept across the entire Partner Square. Everywhere he passed, the trees turned into 650 ashes, and even the ground turned red due to the scorching heat. The air was full of tumbling heat waves. With this blow, dozens more Pokemons fell into a frenzy. However, compared to the total number of Pokemon gathered, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Looking around, Lance at this time seems to have fallen into a sea of Pokemon, and there are wild Pokemon in all directions, and there is no end in sight. Even though his Dragonite Charizard has been promoted to the 3rd level god, it is still difficult to deal with this situation. A Pokemon caught in a rage not only has the ability to fight stronger, but also has no fear of everything. No matter how strong he shows, these Pokemon will oblige to rush over, consuming his strength like moths to flames. At the same time, he was also involved, and he could no longer attack the claws. Under the fierce struggle, the entire arm of the magic claw has already protruded from the crack. It can't go on like this. Never let that thing come out. Lance gritted his teeth. His mind turned quickly, looking for an opportunity to break the game. However, as soon as this thought arose, the next wave of violent Pokemon had already rushed forward. Just as he was about to speak again, the bodies of the violent Pokemons all lit up with a ray of blue light, and then their bodies flew out of control, smashing them towards their companions behind. Go out. Lance was startled, and before he could react, a figure covered by confusion fell beside him. Diantha? Seeing the person coming, Lance's eyes suddenly showed a hint of joy. Apparently, the League headquarters has reacted to the footage it shared. I'm here to help you stop these Pokemons, and you deal with the thing in the crack. In view of the situation at this time, Diantha didn't chatter after landing, and immediately took out a few Pokeballs and summoned his most powerful batch of Pokemon. As early as in the air, she had seen how terrifying the number of this violent Pokemon army was. Even if she was powerful, she did not dare to be careless at this moment. Lance was not hypocritical. After nodding his head, he turned his gaze to the magic claw in the crack of the Heavenly Palace. This is our world. Go back honestly. Charizard, use Jet Flame. Dragonite, use Dragon Rush. He spoke one after another, and all Pokemon burst out with their strongest powers at this moment. However, this time, the demonic claws that could already be stretched did not sit still, and in the palm of his hand, a black-purple light suddenly lit up. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. You can read more daily new novels on fictionzone.net. Both sites share the same login details, so you don't need to sign up again. Chapter 76. The light appeared quite abruptly, and at the moment when it lit up, a terrifying shock wave spread out in all directions. Roar! Only when I heard Dragonite, who had the strength of a third-level god, groaned. The next moment, it flew out like a kite with a broken string. The attacks from Pokemon such as Charizard and Altaria were also intercepted, and they were annihilated in midair by the shockwave when they approached halfway. How is this possible? After seeing this scene, even with Lance's temperament, he couldn't help being surprised. Before he could react, the terrifying shock wave had already arrived in front of him. Fortunately, Dragonite's response was extremely fast. After quickly adjusting his body in midair, Byran spat out a dark red hyper beam from his mouth, which blocked the shock wave for him. Boom! The terrifying shock wave spreads farther and farther. Under the resistance of Dragonite, Diantha, Lance, and others were not affected by the shock wave, but it was not easy for those Pokemon who fell into the rage. But in one face-to-face, dozens of Pokemon fell into the rage. Flew out. Is this the power of the Dark Demon God? With just one arm, a random blow was almost unbearable for a third-level god Dragonite. Lance murmured solemnly, but his eyes gradually became firmer. In any case, this kind of existence must never be allowed to come to this world. If not, I am afraid that waiting for all of them will be a disaster. Lance's thoughts turned sharply, but the owner of the magic claw seemed to know half of his thoughts, and the dark purple light above the magic claw flourished again, condensing a huge black barrier around it. Along with the entire space crack, it is shrouded in it, making it impossible for people to know what happened. Lance frowned and was about to command Pokemon to attack again, but figures suddenly appeared in the sky in this area. As far as the eye can see, it is actually the leader elite of the Alliance and the major region champions. They came as soon as they received the deployment from the headquarters, and now they are finally able to arrive. One after another red light lit up in the field. Wallace's Milotic, Blue's Venusaur, Haxorus of Iris. After receiving the rewards from the God List, the main Pokemon of the Alliance champions have almost all broken through their limits and possessed the strength of a third-level god. Now that they appeared at the same time, a powerful aura suddenly filled the air. Lance, we're here to help you. Alder jumped down from the air, then patted Lance on the shoulder. After seeing the huge black barrier in the air, the always cheerful man lost the smile on his face, and his expression was full of solemnity. Lance swept a circle of champion elites who came to support him. While feeling a little moved, he couldn't help showing a touch of joy. Very good. Everyone came in time, and the contents there have not been completely released. Lorelei, Bruno, you are responsible for intercepting the surrounding Pokemon who are in a frenzy. Good. Everyone responded in unison, and then they all summoned their Pokemon. Nylon, Gorgiast, Volcarona, Escavalier, Gyarados. Pokemon with the worst strength at the peak of champion appeared one after another, surrounding the huge black barrier in the center of the partner square. Everyone, let's do it. Lance looked around, and everyone nodded. Milotic, use the Hydro Pump. Haxorus, use Giga Impact. Vulcan, use Fire Blast. Boom, boom, boom. Under the orders, dozens of powerful and tyrannical attacks rushed out and landed on the huge barrier. Even if the aura of strength emanating from the barrier was extremely powerful, it was difficult to withstand such a combined attack for a while, and the fine cracking sound began to come out. Bang, bang, bang. Finally, under the full force of many powerful Pokemons, cracks appeared on the black-purple barrier, and they continued to spread and grow. After a while, the barrier finally could no longer resist such power, and suddenly shattered with a loud bang. Dozens of attacks also fell on the claws. Just like the claws made of fine steel, terrifying scars appeared under these combined attacks in an instant, and black blood dripped from it. It's now. Lance's eyes lit up, and everyone quickly reacted, commanding their respective Pokemon to attack again. The terrifying power swept the entire Fuchsia City, and even the haze that shrouded this area was shaken away. More than a dozen Pokemons with strength reaching the third level of gods, together with dozens of champions above the peak, jointly launched the attack. The power is extremely terrifying. Even the huge space crack was completely shrouded in it. The dazzling light was like a scorching sun, and a roaring roar could be heard vaguely. As the power gradually dissipated, the magic claw that protruded from the space crack already had only a small amputated arm, which was actually smashed to pieces by this combined attack. Seeing that the broken arm was slowly retracted into the crack, the elite champions of the Pokemon Alliance couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, and their eyes showed joy. Great, I finally sent that thing back. If Lance hadn't discovered it earlier, the guy behind might have come out of the crack. It's dangerous. It's also thanks to everyone who came in time. Otherwise, with my own strength, it would be really difficult to stop that thing. There was a smile on the corner of Lance's mouth, but the worry deep in his eyes did not diminish in the slightest. In any way, there is nothing to be proud of in what just happened. You must know that the few people present can be said to be the strongest combat power in the Alliance, and under the joint attack, the magic claw was smashed to pieces. Not to mention that it was just one of the opponent's arms. As can be seen from Chen's battle images, those dark existences in different dimensions are far from being as simple as one or two ends. What they are facing right now is probably just the other side's pioneers. If you really want to say good news, I am afraid that to a certain extent, it has delayed the pace of the opponent's attack and bought more time for the world. The most important thing right now is to hurry up and find Chen's sleeping place. Thinking of this, Lance prepared to take out the communicator to contact the headquarters to see if there was any new progress. Whoops. But at this moment, a deafening roar suddenly came from the huge crack in the air. Immediately afterwards, the earth seemed to tremble. The entire Fuchsia City was shaking violently at this moment, the houses collapsed, and the smoke and dust rose into the sky. Countless people who were still evacuating were forced to stop, and they all looked in horror in the direction of the city center. The terrifying roar spread all over the sky, and under the gaze of countless eyes, the huge crack that traversed the sky suddenly began to twist, and then an eye appeared, scanning the whole world. The eye didn't stay for long, and after a glance, it disappeared into the endless haze. Before everyone could breathe a sigh of relief, the ground trembled more and more violently. Above the sky, two claws suddenly protruded from the crack, and then they grabbed the edge of the crack and slammed it. The terrifying roar resounded through the sky, and the already huge crack actually expanded to 100 meters at this moment. Under everyone's breathless gaze, an incomparably huge figure suddenly fell from it. It was a tall being as tall as a mountain. Its shape was somewhat similar to that of a human being, but it had 2 heads and 4 arms. But one of the arms was smashed by the joint attack of Lance and others. Drips of black blood. Its whole body was pitch black, exuding a metallic luster, surrounded by a faint haze, and it looked like a demon. In fact, that's exactly what it's called. One of the 72 demon gods, second only to the top ones. I saw it glanced around coldly, and finally set its eyes on Lance and the others. Humanity, the moment it saw a few people, endless hatred emerged in its pair of red eyes. Not only because one of his arms was smashed by them, but also because of the hatred that had accumulated for tens of thousands of years. Damn you all. Without too much crap, I saw that the remaining 3 arms of the demon god folded together in front of him, and a huge black energy ball was formed in an instant, and then rose to meet the storm, and its diameter quickly exceeded 10 meters. The terrifying power instantly spread out, turning into an invisible shock wave, making it difficult for everyone in the Pokemon Alliance to stand in pity. Dark Demon. The expressions of Lance and the others at the moment were extremely solemn. They never thought that they had achieved their goal and drove the devil back to the back of the crack, but the latter actually tore apart the space crack and came to this world. Looking at the expanding energy ball, everyone felt awe in their hearts. Dragonite, use Hyper Beam. Lance spoke in a deep voice, and Dragonite on the side obviously felt the power of the demon god and did not dare to slack off. Under his mouth, a thick column of dark red light suddenly rushed out. The rumbling sound of breaking the air was deafening. Hyper Beam was extremely fast, and in an instant, it was in front of the demon god, but the latter didn't even look at it, and a dark barrier suddenly appeared in front of him. After the Hyper Beam landed on it, let alone smashed it, the ripples didn't even grow at all, and it was annihilated in the air. Have not seen you for tens of thousands of years. Are you already so weak? Inferior and ridiculous races should not exist in this world. A humming sound came from the mouth of the demon god. It glanced at the crowd with disdain, and then 3 sturdy arms pushed, and the black energy ball the size of a house flew out. When everyone saw this, they were shocked and commanded their own Pokemon. Milotic, use blisters. Aerodactyl, use stone edge. Braviary, use air slash. Dozens of attacks swept out at the same time, colliding with the black sphere in the air. Boom! The terrifying wave instantly dispelled haze from the entire partner square. Looking at the scene in midair, Alder's faces showed shock. Even if they had expected it in their hearts, they didn't expect that the power of this dark devil would be so powerful. He was able to block the combined attack of all their Pokémons by himself. Above the sky, the huge black energy ball was domineering to the extreme. Although it seemed to be stuck in the air, it actually had an absolute advantage. It can be clearly seen that those skills that collide with it are being annihilated at an extremely fast speed, which is obviously unsupportable. Even though the strength of the Pokémon present was above the peak of champion, it still seemed extremely insignificant in front of this demon god. If it goes on like this, it will soon be unbearable. Wallace frowned. The expressions of the rest of the people were also quite solemn, and they obviously saw this, but they were helpless for a while. They have never underestimated this dark demon god, and they are full of strength as soon as they make a shot, but the gap between the strengths of the two sides is too great. Under this head-on confrontation, they simply have no better way. The only thing that can be done is to bet one, Wang Li's. Bruno, can you handle those Pokémon alone? Lance gritted his teeth and looked at Bruno behind him. Now they can only let a group of elites join in to resist together, although this will lead to a sudden increase in the pressure caused by the violent Pokémon around them, but there is no way to do it. The black energy ball was still slowly falling, and even though their Pokémon had tried their best to block it, it was still difficult to support. Bruno also saw the current situation clearly, and although the number of violent Pokémon around him made him feel a little uncertain, he still nodded resolutely. With his consent, Lance did not hesitate at the moment, and immediately turned his attention to the other elites, ready to let them change hands to resist the black energy ball together. At this moment, out of the corner of his eyes, he suddenly saw several figures flying from the distant sky. Taking time, his expression turned ugly again. Damn, why at this time? What's wrong, Lee? When Diantha and the others heard his words, they all looked puzzled, and their expressions became ugly as they followed their gazes. Team Aqua, and the people from the Plasma Corps. Is it possible to be here to make trouble at this time? The people from Team Magma are here too, and they're all out there. I should have cleaned up these guys long ago, but they dare to make trouble at such a juncture. Alder spoke in a deep voice, his hands clenched tightly into fists, and his face was extremely ugly. Looking around, the sky in the distance is full of traces of flying Pokémon, and there are several people sitting on the back of each Pokémon. It's definitely not good news for 3 underground organizations that are notorious all over the world. Day. Chapter 77. Judging from the number of people, all the superior cadres of these 3 organizations should have been dispatched. If it was normal, they would have nothing to be afraid of when so many elite champions gathered together, but at this time, they were all surrounded by the Dark Demon and many rampage Pokémon got caught. If the people of these evil organizations really want to do something, they can't spare the energy to stop it. How many superior trainers did you bring with you this time? Lance looked at Wallace and the others, but after they looked at each other, they all just shook their heads. The president said that the situation on your side is too urgent, and we all rushed here. There are still a lot of superior trainers to support, but I'm afraid it will take some time to arrive. As Diantha explained, there was concern in his eyes. With the addition of a group of elites, although they couldn't overcome the Dark Demon, they were able to withstand the black energy ball that was still sinking. A steady stream of terrifying power surged towards the quartet. After reaching a certain limit, a deafening rumbling sound suddenly came out. A terrifying black light rose into the sky and went straight to the sky. Fortunately, Dragonite and other Pokémon reacted extremely quickly, protecting Lance and the others at the first time. As the aftermath dissipated, the entire partner plaza was already in ruins. The ground is full of terrifying cracks like spider webs, and the nearby buildings and trees have been razed to the ground, and even the black mist that spread from the cracks in the space has also been shaken away. It also allowed people evacuating on the outskirts of the city to see the city center. The first thing that caught their eyes was the dark demon god that was 100 meters high and looked like a hill. Then, what is that? The devil has come. Is the world about to be destroyed? I don't want to die yet. People's faces were full of shock and fear. Looking at the huge body of constrict haze, almost everyone was stunned in place. Not only them, but also the members of the Pokémon Alliance who were responsible for maintaining the evacuation order were all terrified at the moment and instinctively stepped back a few steps. At this time, some of them had already evacuated to the hillside on the outskirts of the city. Under the condition of condensing, and many buildings in the city were destroyed, they could vaguely see the scene on the partner square. I seem to have seen Lord Lance's Dragonite. And Lord Wallace's Gyarados, too good. The League didn't give up on us. With these adults around, that demon definitely won't be able to make any waves. Someone was born with a surprise and began to comfort others around him. At this time, Lance and the others, who were in the center of the square, looked more solemn than ever. They had survived the blow just now, but they had used almost all their strength. Not only were they Champion's main Pokemon all dispatched, but even Elite joined in, and even so, they were barely able to resist. From the expression of the Dark Demon God, it is obvious that he has not used his real strength, but is just toying with them. Once they get serious and go all out, with their current strength, I am afraid it will be difficult to resist. Not to mention the sudden emergence of such evil organizations as Team Aqua, Team Magma. Lance. While Lance was still thinking about it, Alder suddenly stood up. I'm going to stop these damned guys. You can just concentrate on dealing with that dark devil. In the current situation, anyone with a discerning eye can see their difficult situation. In this case, they must deal with those evil organizations with minimal effort. Even if he knew very well that even as a champion, he would not be able to face the three evil organizations that the superior cadres poured out at the same time. But this is no way out. He has even made up his mind to die. As long as he can get enough time to destroy that dark devil, everything will be worth it. At least that's what Alder thinks. However, after listening to his words, Lance just shook his head. With the strength of the remaining few of us, it must not be that guy's opponent. Now it's just a gamble. Since you don't know the purpose of those guys in Team Magma, then leave them alone and do your best to deal with the Dark Demon God first. Everyone, even if we are left here today, we must not let this guy leave Fuchsia City, otherwise, the hundreds of thousands of people who are still evacuating may not be able to escape. 650-inch Lance's voice was heavy. It can be seen from the strength displayed by the Dark Demon God just now. Once they can eliminate it, the latter's power, the citizens of Fuchsia City who are evacuating and the people in several surrounding cities may not be spared. This is comparable to the power of a first-level divine beast. They have to go all out to have a chance of victory. After hearing this, everyone didn't say much and didn't pay any attention to the members of the evil organization who came from a distance, but one by one became awe-inspiring. At this time, they had already prepared the consciousness to die. They have no way out. If they fail, hundreds of thousands of civilians will suffer. Dragonite. I'm sorry. I want you to fight this guy. Lance patted Dragonite in front of him apologetically. The latter seemed to sense his emotions. After turning around and cursing him gently, a stronger aura burst out from his body. It seems that he understood Lance's words. At this time, the Pokemon of the elite champions were not only not shocked by the breath of the Dark Demon, but their fighting spirit became more and more high. After realizing this, Lance's eyes also showed a hint of relief, and he didn't say anything more, and turned his eyes to look sharply at the Dark Demon God. The latter also cast his gaze over at this moment, but his eyes were full of irony. I have to say, compared to the guy from 90,000 years ago, you guys are really far behind. For people like you, I'm afraid you don't need those adults to take action. I'll show you now, the power of darkness. The voice of the Dark Devil exploded in the air, and the haze that surrounded it suddenly became richer. A thick black light shot straight into the sky, and then exploded in the heavenly palace. With time, the originally clear sky was suddenly shrouded in black clouds, and even the sun was obscured. A strong wind rose out of thin air, and then intensified, turning into a terrifying tornado that fell from the sky and began to wreak havoc in Fuchsia City. A doomsday landscape. Flying sand and rocks, the wind howling, the huge figure of the Dark Devil looms in it, as if the devil sent from heaven to destroy the world. It's over, it's over. Why are you still standing there? Run. Seeing that there were two dark tornadoes coming out of the city, many citizens who were watching this scene with horror on their faces suddenly fled wildly. The Dark Demon God had obviously noticed their existence a long time ago. Looking down into the distance, a grotesque laughter came out of his mouth. Just right, let's use your inferior ethnic groups as sacrifices to welcome you adults. I saw a purple glow on its 3 arms, and in an instant, countless black tornadoes descended from the sky in the distance, enclosing the entire Fuchsia City. The people who were fleeing in panic stopped under the interception of which tornadoes, and they all showed despair. At the same time, Lance and others who were in the partner square also discovered this anomaly, and after looking at each other, they quickly commanded their respective Pokemon. Dragonite, use Dragon Dance, then Dragon Rush. Aerodactyl, use Agility. Gardevoir, use Psybeam to cover them. Volcarona, it's up to you. Use Screech. With the previous experience, this time everyone did not choose to confront each other, but used tactics together. Some Pokemon are responsible for frontal attack, some are responsible for side support, and some are responsible for long-range interference with the Dark Demon. The strength of more than a dozen famous League Champion elites is far from being as simple as 1 + 1 = 2, and that's their only hope of winning. However, the Dark Demon God obviously didn't put them in his eyes, and only glanced around coldly, and then an arm stretched out and pointed to Dragonite, who was oncoming and rushing in front. A black thunderbolt formed in an instant, and arrived in front of Dragonite in an instant. Even if the latter reacted extremely quickly, it was too late to dodge. After being hit by the thunder, Dragonite froze in midair, sending out a painful growl. As for those covering and disruptive skills, after they fell on the Dark Demon God, they were immediately swallowed up by the black mist on his body, BDCB, and they didn't even have any effect on him. Immune to abnormal status. How can this be? Diantha and the others were all shocked, showing disbelief. In order to expand the odds of winning, they used a lot of status skills to influence the Dark Demon God, but what they didn't expect was that these skills couldn't even break through the layer of haze on their body. In midair, the Dragonite hit by the black thunder fell and slammed into the ground in front of the crowd, blasting the square that was already full of cracks into a big hole. Dragonite! Lance's eyes were red, and he was about to run forward, but found that Dragonite had stood up staggeringly. With one blow, there were already many shocking scars on its body. Although it has not completely lost its combat power, I'm afraid it will not last long. Everyone's heart was stunned, and their expressions became more and more solemn. This is the Dragonite of the 3rd-level mythical beast realm, but it is unbearable for even a single blow from the Dark Devil. Just as everyone looked solemn and thought about how to deal with it, a slightly sarcastic voice suddenly came from behind. Really, I didn't expect you to have this day too. Looking at it, you so-called champions aren't that good. In the end, it's still up to us. If you didn't get in our way and Kyogre was here, how could these guys from different dimensions be allowed to be arrogant? Archie jumped down from the air and landed in front of Lance and the others. Behind him, the superior cadres of Team Aqua, Team Magma, and the Plasma Corps also fell. Bruno, who was still struggling to resist the many violent Pokemon, suddenly felt that the pressure had dropped by half. Looking back, many superiors from the 3 major evil organizations came to him and summoned their own Pokemon to replace him. Blocked nearly half of the pressure. This you. Lance stared blankly at Archie, Chi Yin-song, Kue Chi-si and the others, stunned in place for a while. Seeing his appearance, the grumpy Archie immediately stepped forward, with his hands on his waist, his face full of displeasure. Boy, don't you think we're here to make trouble? Chi Wudong next to him pushed his glasses. The belief that Team Magma insists is to expand the land and increase the living space of human beings. If the world is destroyed, what belief will there be? This world belongs to humans and Pokemon, and there is no room for these other dimensional things to interfere. Our Plasma Regiment seconded. Kue Chi-si, who was beside him, also smiled and turned to look at the behemoth in front of him. This kind of non-human and non-ghost thing will only become an obstacle for our plasma to achieve the goal of the group, so it must be removed first. Although I am very reluctant, I can only cooperate with you temporarily. Come out, Hydreigon. As the red light flickered, a huge flying dragon suddenly appeared in the air, surrounded by a faint haze, with 3 huge heads. Just looking at it was terrifying. Lance looked at the 3 of them in surprise, then nodded, and didn't say anything more, just reminded in a deep voice. Be careful, this Dark Demon God strength is comparable to a 1st-level divine beast. Even if we work together, the odds of winning are not high. We can only try our best to find opportunities. What about the 1st-level divine beast? Go back to wherever it came from. Chi Yin-song sneered, and also took out a few Pokeballs. Come out, Camerupt. Come out, Weezing. One after another, the red lights lit up, but within a short time, the entire partner square was occupied by many powerful Pokemon. As for those Pokemon who were caught in a frenzy, Bruno and the superior members of the 3 evil organizations joined forces to stop them outside the square, leaving plenty of space for them. Everyone, success or failure is here. If we lose, countless ordinary people will suffer. So, Give it your all. Lance spoke with a solemn expression, and then looked at the dark demon god in front of him. Even with the help of Qi Yinsong and others, he didn't have much confidence in his heart at this time. The gap in strength is too large, and it is difficult to make up for it with numbers. If I knew this day would come, I should have trained harder and improved my strength. If Mr. Yi Chen was here, I'm afraid it wouldn't be like this. He secretly clenched his fist. All along, he has been training hard to improve himself, but compared to the current situation, it is still far from enough. I hope that Mr. Yi Chen's trace can be found at the headquarters. Right now, I can only do my best. There was a look of determination in Lance's eyes, and he immediately commanded his Pokemon. Qi Yinsong and the others did not fall behind, and shot at the same time. It took time, and hundreds of attacks gathered together to form a sky-shattering colored beam of light that charged towards the dark demon god. Heaven is roaring. Under this powerful strike, even the black clouds at the end of the sky were affected and began to surging. The dark demon god frowned and seemed to sense the power contained in this blow, and his expression became a little more serious. Of course, only a few points. Before arriving in this world, it was even ready to meet that guy from tens of thousands of years ago. Compared with that existence, these guys in front of him now pose no threat at all, even if it has lost an arm. Fight as hard as you can. Only after the struggle can you experience a deeper despair. The dark devil sneered, and then Jiang Ran straightened his body. A terrifying crack suddenly appeared in its abdomen, and then it split apart towards both sides, and countless pitch-black tentacles drilled out of it. The dark devil is already huge, and his tentacles are even more obscuring, almost covering half of Fuchsia City. Tens of thousands of tentacles seem to have their own lives. After dancing wildly in the air for a while, they turned into a stream and rushed towards the colorful beam of light. The beam of light, gathered by hundreds of Pokemon's all-out blows, is extremely powerful, and it seems to be breaking open the space. Those tentacles were turned into nothingness the moment they touched it. The colorful beams of light were unstoppable, constantly approaching the dark demon god. But there was no trace of panic on the latter's face. There are more and more black tentacles rushing out of its abdominal cavity, as if it were endless. Under such consumption, the power of the colorful beam of light was gradually weakened, and it completely dissipated before reaching the dark demon god. On the other hand, the number of tentacles not only did not decrease at all, but nearly doubled. Then, what is that? Is this really a creature of our world? Demon. That's a demon from hell. On the outskirts of Fuchsia City, the citizens of Fuchsia City who saw this scene fell into fear and instinctively gathered together to seek a sense of security. What's more, they knelt directly on the ground and began to pray. The devil comes to the world. There will be gods to save us, and they will. Forget it. Well, there are only divine beasts in the world. Where can there be any gods? Even Lord Lance and the others are not the opponents of that demon. It's over. We are definitely dead. Yi Chen. By the way, we still have Mr. Yi Chen. That demon will definitely not be Mr. Yi Chen's opponent. Someone suddenly remembered something, and there was hope in their eyes. And under his words, the eyes of everyone around him also lit up. Lance is not the strongest Pokemon trainer right now. There is another existence above him. One has occupied all the lists of the gods and has nearly 100 gods. Yi Chen. There was a glimmer of hope in everyone's eyes. But there were also more realistic people who shook their heads indifferently. Forget it. Well, with Mr. Yi Chen's strength, he can indeed deal with that demon. But did any of you see him appear? The man looked around. After everyone heard this, although they felt unhappy in their hearts, they couldn't refute it. In fact, it's not just them who think the same way. In the partner square, Archie looked at the black tentacles flying in the sky, and a look of fear appeared in his eyes. What the hell is this? I thought our strength should be enough to deal with it, but now it looks like we have less chance of winning than Jado. Qi Yinsong pushed up his glasses, then looked at Lance. That's a rather optimistic forecast. Boy, to be honest, your Pokemon Alliance has been doing so much recently. Have you found any trace of Mr. Yi Chen? I am afraid that only he can deal with the current situation. Hearing this, Lance immediately showed a wry smile. Do you think the situation would have developed like this if we knew where Mr. Yi Chen was? The only thing I can tell you is that Mr. Yi Chen fell into a deep sleep tens of thousands of years ago, and no one knows when he woke up and where he is now. Although I know the current situation is not good for us, but now we can only rely on ourselves. As he spoke, he slowly looked at the crowd. Hearing this, Kueiseki, Archie, and the others all frowned, but didn't say much. In fact, They were prepared for the worst before they got here. After all, what the Pokemon Alliance can't handle, naturally it can't be a simple character. Today, even if I put the whole Team Aqua in, I'm going to let this thing know that this world isn't where they're supposed to be. Archie snorted coldly and immediately clapped her hands. All Team Aqua superior officers took a step forward at this moment. I don't believe that everyone spreads the attack. Such a big guy can have no weaknesses. Yes. A group of superiors responded in unison and greeted their respective Pokemon to attack. But at this moment, the Dark Demon God didn't even have the idea of avoiding it. He just sneered and looked down, letting those scattered attacks smack down to his body. Even the haze on his body was difficult to break. Dying, the struggling ants are ridiculous. The rumbling voice resounded in the sky, and the next moment, the tentacles that filled the sky suddenly rushed towards the people below. For a while, there was a lot of panic, and occasionally I could see the rays of light from Pokemon skills, but they were soon drowned in the endless ocean of tentacles. I don't know how long it took before the tentacles slowly dissipated. In the entire partner square, except for Lance who was still relying on Charizard to barely stand. Everyone else in Pokemon collapsed in the attack just now. Not even Lance's ace, Dragonite, was spared, and it suffered too many attacks to protect everyone. Diantha, Alder, including Archie, were all stumped to the ground at this time, with despair in their eyes. The difference in strength is too great. Under the almost endless tentacle attack, even their strength could not resist. Some of the weaker people, especially the superior members of the three major evil organizations, have killed and injured a lot of people at this moment, and many of them have lost their expressions. Damn it, how can I be defeated by this kind of thing? Kueiseki was breathing heavily and tried his best to stand up, but his broken right leg obviously did not support him, and he fell down again just halfway through his stand. At the same time, the Pokemon League executives, who were watching this scene through Lance's communicator, were in a panic. At the Alliance headquarters, Damallon looked at the scene in the picture with trembling all over his body, and even his standing was a little unstable. How so? What about the manpower in the surrounding cities? Has it been transferred? No, those supports are useless. What about the person in charge of finding Mr. Yichun? Is there any news? He tried his best to remain calm and questioned the staff next to him. The power of this dark demon is far beyond what they can deal with, unless they can find Yichin's sleeping place to wake him up. Otherwise, the outcome of Lance et al. Is almost certain. However, what awaited him was a panicked shaking of his head. At the same time, Noira City. With the collapse of the space barrier, the blocked haze rushed out again, and the entire Noira City and a large surrounding area were shrouded in it. Cynthia, who was busy controlling the wild Pokemon, suddenly stopped, ignoring the calls of the people around her, and just stared blankly at the communication screen in her hand. Her mind was in chaos. She did not expect that at such a critical time, the evil organization that she dealt with on weekdays would become the help of the Alliance. What was even more unexpected was that even with their helping hand and several Alliance champions such as Lance, they were still unable to resist the Dark Demon God. She knew very well that, as the highest combat power that human beings can produce today, once Lance and others fell, human beings would basically symbolize their demise. Even if they have failed, who else can resist that dark devil? There was a look of despair in Cynthia's eyes. If he could show up, perhaps, a thought suddenly appeared in her heart, but she quickly shook her head, expelling the thought, and instead showed a wry smile. In order to find the place where Yichin slept, the Pokemon Alliance consumed a lot of manpower, but in the end there was no news at all. Now that the situation has become so serious, even if there are clues, it is probably too late. At least Lance and the others, as well as Fuchsia City, and even the citizens of several cities around Fuchsia City, may all fall into this disaster. Thinking of this, Cynthia's left hand couldn't help holding it up, and her body was shaking slightly. She wanted to rush to help, but let's not talk about the distance and the factors that need her to guard here. Even if she abandons everything and goes to support, it is difficult to change the result with her strength. Thinking of this, a strong sense of despair and powerlessness flooded into Cynthia's heart. She has never hated her weakness as much as she does today. At the same time, Fenglu region, Stephen looked at the picture on the communicator, and he was also lost in a trance, and a look of confusion flashed in his eyes. Isn't all the effort we've made up to now pointless? Mr. Yichun, didn't you end the dark turmoil? Why don't you wake up and save them? To the east of Kanto region, Blue, who was fighting the wild Pokemon, suddenly stopped and looked at the communicator in his hand with panic in his eyes. Compared with those who knew the scene through the communication screen, the citizens in the outskirts of Fuchsia City felt much more real. Deep fear and despair constrict is in everyone's heart. The whistling black tornado blocked their way of retreat, and everyone knew very well that once the dark demon god had dealt with Lance and the others, there was only death waiting for them. I don't want to die, Mother. A little girl cried and fell into her mother's arms, and her mother could only protect her tightly, even though her body was constantly shaking. That's right. That's what I want. Pleasant fear and despair. Death has value only for you in this state. Shout. Pray. Ha ha ha. We are the rulers of the world. The rumbling sound resounded through the sky, and the tentacles of endless darkness poked out, covering the entire sky of Fuchsia City, as if to cover the whole world. Watching this scene, countless people looked up at the sky with despair on their faces. But what everyone did not expect was that after the hundreds of millions of tentacles expanded to a certain extent, they stopped abruptly and did not fall, but were just so stiff in the air. Okay. The dark demon god seemed to have sensed something and looked up at the sky. At the same moment, a golden light actually shone down. Wherever they passed, those dark tentacles seemed to have encountered natural enemies, and they all quietly turned into nothingness. The rays of light fell from the end of the sky, shining directly on the partner square. Looking up, in the light, I could vaguely see a figure like a unicorn. This chapter, the content contains pictures. Click the illustration button in the lower right corner of the screen to view the pictures. Chapter 78. Because of the light and the distance, it was difficult for everyone to see clearly for a while, and they couldn't help but narrow their eyes. So, is that a Pokemon? Some people spoke with uncertainty, but the people around them just shook their heads. I can't see clearly. I don't seem to have seen such a Pokemon, no. Why do I look familiar? Me too. I always feel as if I've seen it somewhere. Someone nodded in agreement, racking their brains to search in the memory. And with them, there are Lance, Archie, and the others, as well as Damalanki, who is watching all this through the communication screen, and other high-level Pokemon Alliance leaders. Everyone was shocked by the scene in front of them. The light from the Heavenly Palace is warm and harmonious, but with a certain supreme majesty, people can't help but give birth to the heart of worship. Looking around, wherever the light passed, all the tentacles of haze melted like ice and blood, and then dissipated. The light came from the end of the sky and finally landed on the partner square. It took time, and the square that had already been in a mess during the battle actually sprouted from the ground at a speed visible to the naked eye. Just like the spring breeze, in just a few breaths, the entire square became green. At the same time, the injuries on Diantha, Archie, and others who had been hit hard by the attack of the dark demon god began to heal quickly at this moment. It was the Pokemon who were the most seriously injured, who began to recover quickly and then slowly open their eyes. Lance's Dragonite is also on the list. Because it has resisted a large number of attacks from the dark demon god, Dragonite's injury can be said to be the most serious of all Pokemon, and even several shocking wounds can be seen on the body surface. But as the rays of light from the sky fell, those wounds began to heal one after another, and Dragonite, who was seriously injured and in a coma, also opened his eyes at this moment. Seeing this scene, Lance was surprised, and the shock in his eyes became more intense. In such a short period of time to heal the severely wounded third-level God Dragonite, this ability is difficult for even a first-level divine beast to do. This is a true miracle. He looked up at the figure in the sky, majestic, sacred, and at the same time gave him an inexplicable sense of familiarity. He kept groping for his memory, and after a while, as if thinking of something, his expression suddenly became extremely excited, and even his body began to tremble slightly. This is Mr. Yi Chen's Pokemon. He remembered that the familiarity was not without reason. He had indeed seen this Pokemon before, and it was on the list issued by the God List not long ago. The physical injuries have recovered quite a bit, and Diantha and the others, who were able to stand up at this time, were stunned by his sudden words, and they all cast doubtful eyes over them. Mr. Yi Chen's Pokemon? That's right, I can be sure. Lance nodded solemnly. On the last list released by the God List, the top of the general list, the legendary Pokemon who created the world, Arceus. As soon as these words came out, everyone showed disbelief. Although they have been overwhelmed by those spatial cracks for a while, they have also taken the time to pay attention to the God rankings, especially some of the top rankings. They didn't react for a while, but after being reminded by Lance, everyone also recalled the figure who was at the top of the general list. Just like the existence in the palace today. Really, it's Arceus. The legendary Pokemon who created the world have appeared. Is this here to save us? Diantha and the others' eyes flashed with joy. It is difficult for anyone to control their emotions. Rao is Maxi and Kuei-Chi, who have always been calm, and now his face is also full of uncontrollable ecstasy. Team Aqua's Cadre Chow widened his eyes, hooked his neck and looked at the sky, his body trembling with excitement. If I remember correctly, on the list of gods, this Arceus seems to be a creation-level existence? Nonsense, the Pokemon who created the world can't be the creation class. Archie slapped Chow on the back of the head, and then burst out laughing. It seems that we shouldn't die. Even the god of creation came to save us. Now I want to see how arrogant this thing from another dimension is. Listening to his words like a fox and a tiger, everyone couldn't recognize a smile on the corners of their mouths. Especially the superior members of the underground organization. All of them started cheering at this moment. Seeing hope at the most desperate time. This kind of joy after the catastrophe is incomparable. Not only them, but Damn Allen, who was watching this scene through the communication screen, was also full of excitement at the moment, and even the large white beard began to shake. Really, it is the creator god, Arceus. God bless me, Pokemon League. In Noera City, Cynthia looked at the unicorn figure shrouded in light on the communication screen, and her eyes flashed with an incomprehensible brilliance. There is happiness, shock, joy, and a hint of undetectable anticipation. Even Arceus showed up. Could it be him? Cynthia only felt her heart beat faster, her eyes fixed on Arceus on the screen. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of Fuchsia City, some of the people who were also staring at the sky also recalled and recognized the identity of the figure. The creation-level divine beast, Arceus. Great. We are all saved. Arceus? Isn't it the top of the general list? I remember it seems to be Mr. Yi-Chen's Pokemon. Is it Mr. Yi-Chan who shot it? I told you a long time ago that it is useless to worship God, and it really depends on Mr. Yi-Chen in the end. Everyone's eyes showed joy. Even though the strength displayed by the dark demon god was extremely powerful, everyone felt relieved the moment they recognized the figure of Tiangong. They have all seen the information released by the gods. As the legendary existence that created the world, Arceus's strength is even higher than that of the quasi-creation level colorful Rayquaza. This is almost the limit of power that people can understand. No matter how strong that dark demon god is, can it be stronger than Arceus? That ghost that came out of nowhere dared to invade our world, and I have never heard of Mr. Yi-Chen's name. Got well, you, Xiaohu and fake Tiger Mighty, before the appearance of the god list. I'm afraid even the big figures in the Pokemon Alliance have never heard of Mr. Yi-Chen's existence. Never mind, anyway, I have enough regrets about that damn thing now. I will see if it can be as arrogant as before in front of Mr. Yi-Chen's Arceus. Someone spoke proudly, apparently having been carried away by the joy of the rest of his life. And the facts are quite similar to what was said. Unlike Lance and the others who were in ecstasy, after noticing the figure in Tiangong, the dark demon god's eyes also showed disbelief, but there was a touch of panic in them. Arceus. And no. Impossible. Why are you still alive? You are a human. Why can you survive the joint attack of the three adults? The huge body of the dark demon god involuntarily took 2 steps back, stirring up the dust in the sky. Different from those ordinary people as a first-level god, it not only saw Arceus appearing in Tiangong, but also saw a figure on Arceus' back. It was a young man in his early 20s, with sharp edges and corners, and every detail of his facial features was just right, revealing a natural beauty that made it hard to forget at a glance. But the most eye-catching is his pair of pupils, which seemed to contain the entire universe. As a participant in the world-shattering war 90,000 years ago, this human face, even after another 90,000 years, will never admit its mistake. Illusion. Yes, it must be an illusion. You are fake. Arceus is fake too. The dark demon god seemed to be in a daze, constantly muttering to himself, and then his expression suddenly became extremely fierce. Its body surface lit up with a strong black on. The aura in its body continued to rise at this moment, and even its body grew a lot. On the side of his body, the wound of the broken arm that was originally smashed by Lance and the others was wriggling strangely, but after a while, a new arm was born from it. This world belongs to us. The dark devil roared angrily, and a strange black vortex appeared on each of the 4 arms. One after another pitch-black thunderbolt shot out from it, and then gathered in front of him to form a terrifying thunderbolt with a diameter of tens of meters, which went straight towards the sky in a thunderous roar. 4 flowers. At this moment, the whole world is silent. Whether it was Lance, Archie and the others, or the ordinary people on the outskirts of Fuchsia City, or Damalangi and Cynthia who were watching all this through the live broadcast, they couldn't help holding their breath at the moment. Even though they knew very well that Arceus, who is a god of creation, must have unimaginable strength, but at the moment of seeing this black thunder, a heart could not help but be mentioned in the throat. The horror of this attack was beyond their imagination. With one blow, if the target is not the Heavenly Palace, I am afraid that the entire Fuchsia City will be destroyed. This also caused everyone to instinctively feel a little worried. However, this worry did not last long, and they found that it was a little redundant. With the terrifying black thunder going straight into the sky, Arceus' waist suddenly lit up above the sky. After a while, 18 different slates appeared out of thin air. Black Lether castrated fiercely, but after reaching the area in front of Arceus, it was like a mud ox entering the sea, and suddenly disappeared without a trace. Not even a movement was raised. How can this be? What happened? Did you see that? Dark Demon God released water? Impossible. What about that attack just now? Everyone watching this was stunned for a while. A terrorist attack that was enough to turn the entire Fuchsia City into nothingness disappeared in an instant, and from beginning to end, no one could see clearly what happened. Even Damalanki, who was watching all this through the communication screen, widened his eyes at this time. Professor Oak, see what happened to you just now. The attack of the Dark Devil seems to have been neutralized. Although I also saw this legendary Pokemon for the first time, but it should be related to the slate beside it. Professor Oak pointed to the screen. Among the 18 stone slabs floating beside Arceus, one was bothered by a faint glow. After the black thunder was completely swallowed, the light began to fade and finally disappeared without a trace. Although it is not clear how to do it, it does not prevent them from being shocked. And it was not only them who were equally shocked. The Dark Demon God saw that his Xeon strike was so unsuccessful, and in addition to being shocked, the fear in the depths of his eyes suddenly began to thicken. Unlike Damalan and the others, it's pretty clear what just happened. This trick, it has seen it as early as 90,000 years ago. This is an ability unique to Arceus that can neutralize attacks of various attributes. In the shocking battle that year, even the most powerful adults had to use special means to hurt it. In other words, the Arceus in front of him is not an illusion. Even if it had a premonition in its heart, with the last trace of fortune being broken, the Dark Devil's eyes were completely occupied by terror. Arceus, a creation-level existence, even those adults can hardly gain any advantage in a one-on-one situation. What's more, there is that human being on its back. The human who brought heavy damage to their species tens of thousands of years ago. Escape. It was the only thought left in his mind at this time. In any case, be sure to bring back the news that this person is still alive. In the face of this kind of existence, unless the adults personally take action, otherwise, even if the 72 demon gods come together, there is absolutely no chance of winning. At the moment when this thought came to him, he didn't care about his arrogant words earlier, and saw the Dark Devil taking huge steps, and immediately ran towards the huge space gap behind him. And after this scene fell into the eyes of Lance and others, it also shocked them a lot. Dark Demon God, escaped? The corners of Archie's mouth twitched, only feeling that what happened in this short period of time was a little too magical. Several Alliance champion elites, together with the Dark Demon God, who was unable to resist all of their 3 underground organizations, are now running away without fighting? Unlike him, although Lance, Qi Yensong and others were equally astonished, they were much calmer, and immediately looked at Tiangong. Look, there seems to be a person on Arceus' back. As Arceus fell, they could see a lot more clearly. On Arceus' back, a young man was carrying his hands on his back, looking down at the dark demon fleeing below expressionlessly. So, Chapter 79. That looks a little familiar. Someone showed a thoughtful look, but in exchange, it was just a blank stare from the people around him. Nonsense, that's Mr. Yichun. Besides Mr. Yichun, who else can be on Arceus's back? A god-level existence. Go up and stand for me to see? Yes. I remembered that when the god ranking released the leaderboard of the peak battle, he was in it. It doesn't matter if the eyes are not good. The brain is not very good. Everyone laughed and shook their heads, but their faces were still full of excitement. Even though everyone had covet in their hearts before, they never actually thought that Yichun would actually appear to save them. Also saw the existence of such legends as Arceus. And not just these ordinary trainers. After seeing Yi Chen's figure, even Lance and the others were stunned, staring blankly at the figure in Tiangong. Really, yes, Mr. Yi Chen? Great, well, he finally woke up. Ha 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 ha, this trip really didn't come in vain. I didn't expect that after inquiring for so long, there was no news, and now I see it here. Looks like a young girl, but I don't know if it's good for our team Aqua Beauties. Do you think he's immortal? If you don't want to die, I advise you not to have such thoughts and save us from implicated. Archie's words were just halfway through when he was interrupted by Maxie next to him. He knew exactly what the opponent was thinking. Want to captivate this presence with beauty? Is it possible? That's true. Hearing Maxie's words, Archie didn't get angry, just laughed twice and didn't say any more. At the same time, under all gazes, Arceus in the sky had already fallen over Fuchsia City, and the dark demon god had already reached the front of the space crack at this time, and wanted to return to its original world through the crack. 72 Pillars of Darkness Demon God. In front of me, you are not even qualified to escape. A cold but domineering voice suddenly came out, and then I saw the young man in the air patted Arceus under him, who immediately raised his head. A bright yellow bright spot suddenly appeared in front of him, and then rapidly expanded. But after a while, a red-yellow beam of light rushed out, and the speed was extremely fast, and it was in front of the dark demon god in an instant. The latter obviously knew that it was difficult to dodge this blow, and immediately roared. An endless black light erupted from his body. A huge barrier instantly appeared in front of him. Crack, however, the barrier seemed to be extremely solid, but in front of the beam of light, it was like a piece of paper, unable to even block it for a moment. The moment the two came into contact, the barrier with a diameter of more than 100 meters shattered, and the red-yellow beam of light was castrated and fell directly on the Dark Devil. Even if the latter set up 4 sturdy arms to block him in a panic, it would not help. In front of that beam of light, everything seemed fragile. Boom! The arm that was used to cover was instantly turned into nothingness, and the beam of light passed through with lightning speed, leaving a terrifying hole in the chest and abdomen of the dark demon god, and then penetrated straight into the ground. The entire Fuchsia City was shaking violently at this moment, and a deep pit with a diameter of more than 100 meters was formed in an instant. On the other hand, the dark demon god had lost the initial arrogance in its eyes, and was instead occupied by panic and unwillingness, staring at the wound in his abdomen. As one of the 72 demon gods, it possesses extremely strong resilience, and as long as it is willing to pay the price, no matter how serious the injury is, it can be restored to its original state in a short period of time. However, at this time, the wound on its abdomen was filled with a faint golden glow, which completely blocked the power in its body. This is the power of the Creator God. Create the world and destroy the world. This power looks gentle and beautiful, but it contains a strong power of destruction, and it can even clearly feel that its own power and body are being rapidly disintegrated. No, it can't be. You're long overdue. It's impossible. The dark devil kept muttering to himself, and as his body continued to disintegrate, it turned into haze and floated in the air. Its voice gradually blurred and finally dissipated. At the same time, everyone watching this scene was completely sluggish. Killed in one hit? What a terrifying power. Is this the legendary existence that created the world? It's terrifying, even if the trainers from all over the world gather together. I'm afraid it's not the opponent of this Pokemon. Lance and the others looked sluggish, only to feel that their worldview was impacted. Even though they knew for a long time that Arceus, who is a god of creation, must have an unimaginable power, but they didn't expect it to be so strong. Gathering the strength of all of them, the dark devil who could only be crushed in the end, in front of Arceus, he did not even have the desire to fight, and in the end was obliterated by one blow. The gap is so large that it can be said that there is no comparability at all. Not only them, but all the residents of Fuchsia City who were on the outskirts of Fuchsia City were also stunned by this scene, and they all gasped. It's so terrifying. It can't even stop a single blow. Fortunately, Mr. Yi Chen is a human being. If he were an enemy, the world would have been destroyed long ago. I have a bold idea. You said, is it possible for Mr. Yi Chen to accept apprentices or something? Everyone murmured. On the other hand, Yi Chen, who was above the sky, did not notice the reaction of the people below. Seeing that the dark demon god was killed, he patted Arceus and signaled the latter to descend downwards. In the partner square, looking at Arceus, who was enveloped in a faint divine light, Everyone, including Lance, felt their heart beat several times faster and immediately spread out consciously. If it takes time, the center of the entire partner square is vacated. In order to make room as much as possible, the superior cadres of those underground organizations put away their Pokémons as soon as possible. Not long after, Arceus landed on the partner square, but everyone gathered around looked at him in astonishment, and no one dared to step forward. The strength that the latter showed before was too terrifying. Even if everyone knew that the existence of the god of creation should have no malicious intent, the instinctive admiration and fear in his heart stopped all thoughts. In the end, it was Lance who stood up first. After hesitating for a while, he finally clenched his teeth and bowed respectfully in the direction of Arceus. Mr. Yi-chan, I'm Lance from the Pokemon League, and on behalf of everyone here, thank you for your help. If not for you, because of the terrifying battle scene before, Lance, who was too stressed, unconsciously used honorifics. At this moment, the young man on Arceus also turned his head and interrupted him with a slightly surprised expression. You know me? The intruding question made Lance stunned for a moment, but as a senior member of the Alliance, he still had some concentration, and he quickly calmed down and said 1510. There has been a senior's battle influence on the god list. In addition, we have also found information about the senior in some ancient ruins, so I dare to speculate, and please don't blame the senior. Speaking of this, his heart couldn't help but get nervous. Although in their speculation, Yi-chan, who has been recognized by many gods and beasts, should not be a villain, but at this moment, he is also afraid that a wrong sentence will arouse the anger of the other party. This kind of existential anger is far beyond what the Pokemon Alliance today can bear. Fortunately, the young man, Yi-chan, obviously didn't care about this, and just nodded thoughtfully. He slept for too long, and although he also sensed the appearance and changes of the gods in his slumber, he still needs to spend some time to recall and digest. After thinking about this, Yi-jian didn't tangle too much in this regard, and turned to ask, how many of these dark demon gods have appeared now? The one that the seniors solved just now is the first one. The first only. It seems that it is not too late to wake up. Yi-chan whispered to himself. What about the space crack? Space cracks appeared after the announcement of the flight department list of the god ranking. It has only been about 3 hours now. Now there are a total of 7 places around the world, all of which are located in different regions. This crack in Fuchsia City is new and at the same time the biggest one. Lance didn't dare to hide the slightest bit and told everything he knew. After Yi-chan heard this, he frowned slightly and then calmed down. He came just in time. Although those dark demon gods have recovered their vitality and are preparing to make a comeback as expected, it is obviously just the beginning and has not caused too serious consequences. He still has a chance to prepare himself. This time, it won't be the same as 90,000 years ago. Yi-chan murmured, then ignored Lance and the others, lightly tipped his toes, and the whole person was suspended in the air, heading towards the huge crack in the sky. 100-meter-long crack stretches across the sky, as if it leads to an endless abyss, and dark mist constantly seeps out of it. After waking up again after a lapse of 90,000 years, he still has a lot of preparations to do, and now is not the time to fight those dark demon gods head-on. In order to prevent the space cracks from continuing to expand and more demons and haze to endanger the world, he must restore these space cracks. Under the gaze of countless eyes, Yi-chan reached out a hand, and then tapped his index finger in the air. It takes time, and a space chain spreads out. As if it had caused some kind of resonance, the space of the entire area fluctuated violently at this moment. Under the pulling of the ripples, countless spaces appeared and spread one after another, and finally the entire space was covered with cracks. Seal up. With a soft drink, the ripples covering the entire partner square stopped in an instant, and then dissipated into nothingness. The huge space crack with a diameter of more than 100 meters shook violently, and then slowly closed in the shocked eyes of countless people. After a series of drops spread and covered the entire Fuchsia City, in the high sky, the crack had completely disappeared, as if it had never existed. Disappeared. You didn't even use the power of Pokemon, Mr. Yi-chan? Is he really human? Everyone's faces melted together, and a shocking color appeared in their eyes again. If it was the crack repaired by Arceus, they might be more accepting, but just now everyone could see clearly that Arceus did not intervene, and Yi did it all by himself. Even Lance and others were stunned by this scene, but compared to ordinary people, they had already learned some information about Yi-chan from ancient legends, and they obviously had to accept it better. The king of superpowers really is Mr. Yi-chan? Lance murmured, not knowing that the scene that had just happened in front of him was being staged simultaneously all over the world. In Noera City, Cynthia, who was immersed in the communication screen, suddenly noticed a little movement and looked up to the front. Above the lake, a large number of ripples suddenly appeared around the space crack that had already expanded to nearly 20 meters. After a while, with the sudden stagnation of the ripples, the space crack began to slowly close in front of her eyes until it disappeared. Even the weird haze that enveloped the entire Noera City gradually dissipated as the space cracks healed. At the same time, for Tree City, Isira City, Vermilion City, space cracks around the world are beginning to close and disappear at this moment. Damage and Professor Oak, who were watching all this at the Alliance headquarters, looked at each other and both saw the shock in each other's eyes. What he cast just now seems to be the power of the law. This Mr. Yi Chun, I'm afraid it can no longer be measured by common sense. Professor Oak spoke in a deep voice, and Damalangi nodded in agreement, then sighed silently. Hope this will be a good thing for us. Fuchsia City. As the space crack completely dissipated, Yi Jian also returned to Arceus' side and began to look at these people in the square again. Under his gaze, Lance, Diantha, including Maxie and others became extremely nervous, and they didn't dare to breathe. Even the ace Pokemon under them seemed to feel Yi Chen's strength, or perhaps because of the existence of Arceus, they instinctively took a step back after being touched by the gaze. Seeing them like this, Yi Chen didn't say anything, but looked at the terrifying pit that had appeared before Arceus' blow. Arceus, recover, he spoke softly, and the latter immediately took a step forward, and Ying's own body surface lit up. The earth began to tremble, and at this moment the hard surface turned into waves, rolling up and down. But after a while, the huge, deep hole disappeared strangely. Although the buildings on it did not recover, the terrifying hole with a diameter of more than 100 meters was filled. After doing all this, Yi Chen looked at Lance again. You are Lance? Yes, Senior. Although he had said it once before, there was no dissatisfaction on Lance's face, and he quickly replied respectfully. Yi Chen nodded. If I remember correctly, you said you were from the Pokemon League. Although it's not clear what the current Pokemon Alliance has become, the rest of the game will be left to you. I still have things to do. Everything is based on the instructions of the seniors. Lance bowed respectfully again, and after a moment of hesitation, took out another badge from his waist. Senior, please accept it. This is the badge that I carry with me. No matter where the senior is, as long as we find an Alliance member to show this badge, we will get the news as soon as possible and go to greet the senior. No, I'll come to you if I need it. Before Lance could finish speaking, Yi Chen waved his hand and jumped onto Arceus. With his ability, it is not a problem to find these people, and naturally he does not need that so-called badge. The most urgent task at the moment is to find those former partners first. However, just as Yi Chen was about to greet Arceus to leave here, countless overcast rains appeared on the sky of Fuchsia City, which was already clear. The rumbling sound of thunder continued to resound in the sky, and looking around, you could vaguely see a colorful light that was blocked by the dark clouds coming from the Heavenly Palace. Lance and the others who had just survived the disaster, as well as the citizens of Fuchsia City, were all taken aback by the sudden movement, and all of them instinctively looked up into the sky, for fear that the dark devil had come again. On the contrary, it was Yi Chen. At the moment when the vision appeared, there was a faint smile on the corner of his mouth, and a look of nostalgia appeared in his eyes. This guy, after so many years, still likes this kind of pomp. He recalled that 90,000 years ago, he always liked to complain about this, but he didn't expect that after so long, it still didn't change at all. Not only him, but Arceus on the side couldn't help showing a humanized faint smile after seeing the movement of the sky. The cloud is still growing. As the rumbling thunder became more and more intensive, a colorful light pierced through the dark clouds above Fuchsia City and fell straight down. A huge figure suddenly appeared from it. It was the colorful Rayquaza who once rescued Lance and other high-level Alliance leaders from Team Rocket's. With the appearance of the colorful Rayquaza, an extremely terrifying atmosphere suddenly swept the entire Fuchsia City. Before everyone had time to be shocked, they saw a blue light lit up again in the dark clouds. A barrier constructed purely by confusion broke out from the cloud and appeared in everyone's field of vision. That's it, Mewtwo? Because Team Rocket's made a lot of big news before, and Mewtwo also appeared frequently in people's field of vision. Many people recognized it immediately, showing shock. How did it come? If I remember correctly, Mewtwo doesn't seem to be Mr. Yi Chen's Pokemon. Its trainer seems to be a guy named Giovanni, I heard he's the leader of Team Rockets. There was a lot of discussion. Before they could discuss the reason, another powerful aura shrouded down. In the other direction of Fuchsia City, a petite figure shrouded in a pink haze also flew towards this side. Mew is here too? Damn it. What's going on today, Mr. Yi-chan? Arceus, colorful Rayquaza, and Mewtwo and Mew. Is there something big going on in our Fuchsia City? It's you, the brainless guy again. Can't you see that they are all running towards Mr. Yi-chan? One person said with a worried face, but he was quickly despised by the people around him. Fortunately, those people obviously didn't have time to waste on him, and after a speechless sentence, they looked at the sky again. At this moment, the three figures exuding a powerful aura had all gathered in the sky above the partner square, and they were all staring at Yi-Chen below, their eyes full of surprises. Especially Mew. After seeing Yi-Chen's face clearly, the aura on his body disappeared instantly, and his figure appeared in front of Yi-Chen in a flash. Yi-Chen, I knew. You definitely won't lie to me. You are finally back. Mew's big eyes shone with crystal-clear luster, and the emotions that had been silent for tens of thousands of years seemed to burst out at this moment and plunged into Yi-Chen's arms. Looking at the little guy in his arms, Yi-Chen's icy face finally showed a sincere smile and gently stroked Mew's head. I promise you, this time, I won't leave you guys again. After saying that, he turned his eyes to the colorful figure in Tiangong again. Have you flown enough? Come down too. As he opened his mouth, in the eyes of Lance and the others, the strong presence of the seven-colored Rayquaza with unparalleled power immediately dissipated, and then fell down obediently. After seeing this scene, everyone in the square was shocked by Rayquaza's attitude, and they all retreated in a panic, leaving a wide area for Rayquaza. Looking at the top divine beasts in front of them, coupled with Yi-Chen such a divine being, everyone who was already nervous stood on the spot at a loss, not even daring to move, for fear of disturbing their relationship. The reminiscence between the old and the old is therefore being watched. They are all very clear that these beings in front of them, if anyone shot, even if all of them add up, they will definitely not be able to resist. At this time, it is better to be as low-key as possible. Even if the atmosphere is not breathing, the state of motionless is indeed very torment. Yi-Chen didn't notice everyone's pattern, and after patting Rayquaza who was leaning down, he turned his gaze to Mewtwo and Tiangong. After sleeping for 90,000 years, although he has a lot of things he wants to know from Rayquaza, he is not in a hurry to talk about it later. Compared with these, what interested him more was the existence of Mewtwo. He possesses the power of various laws, and his perception ability is comparable to that of the top divine beasts. The moment he saw Mewtwo, he noticed many similarities with Mew. It's like a Mew made for fighting. While Yi-Chen was staring at Mewtwo, Mewtwo was also staring at him stunned. Before he could ask, the latter's voice came out first. You are Yi-Chen. No, I should call you Mr. Yi-Chen. Mewtwo's voice of will sounded, causing Yi-Chen to raise his eyebrows. He didn't expect that not only Lance and the others knew of their existence, but even Mewtwo recognized themselves. Apparently, someone from what should be the Pokemon Alliance found out some information about themselves. Thinking of this, Yi-Chen didn't show much surprise, but looked at Mewtwo with a flat expression. Mewtwo, you were still born. It's a pity that although the technology of cloning has given you unparalleled power, it has also become your shackles. It is not a Pokemon born from heaven and earth. It is difficult to control more laws, and achievements are limited after all. Are you trying to push the current limit and go further? Yi-Chen seemed to have thought of something, and said lightly. Mewtwo just shook her head. I want to know what the purpose of my existence is. Since birth, I've been in endless battles, helping hand Team Rockets taking down every one of their opponents, but by the end, I got tired of that feeling. I want to find myself, but I'm just a clone. I don't know what the purpose of my existence is. Does it mean to exist? Yi-Chen raised his eyebrows, quickly understood, and then shook his head. Every existence has its own meaning, and you are no exception. You may have been cloned, but since you were born with self-awareness, you are no longer a clone. You are you. You are not the shadow of any existence, but an independent existence. You can rely on your own will to pursue what you want to pursue, or to protect what you want to protect. Existence has no meaning in itself, but you can create and give it meaning. Yi-Chen spoke lightly, and after hearing his words, Mewtwo lowered his head and fell into contemplation. It can be seen from the dark confusion luster of its body. It is obvious that Yi-Chen's words have caused a great impact on its thinking, and it cannot be digested and understood in a short time. And Yi-Chen didn't say anything more, and jumped to the top of the colorful Rayquaza's head. He still has a lot of things to do, and naturally he has no time to waste here. Before leaving, he suddenly thought of something and looked at Mewtwo. If you still don't understand, you can follow me first. Maybe you can slowly understand the meaning and find your own meaning. After saying this, he patted the colorful Rayquaza under him. With the rays of light rising into the sky, in just a moment, the silhouettes of Rayquaza, Arceus, and Mew disappeared at the end of the sky. Mewtwo looked up in that direction with a complicated look, and eventually followed, leaving only Lance and the others who were still sluggish. After confirming that the few terrifying divine beasts had completely left this place, everyone breathed a sigh of relief, and everyone only felt that their backs were soaked in cold sweat. Even if it is clear that these divine beasts are not malicious to them, but even so, the pressure of just staying by their side has surpassed the time when fighting the Dark Devil. This is a kind of extreme pressure, and even makes life impossible to resist the slightest thought. Some of the less courageous even slumped on the ground for the first time, looking at the far side of the sky with a look of fear. I suddenly felt that the Dark Devil doesn't seem so scary anymore. I saw so many top-level mythical beasts and Mr. Chen at one time, but unfortunately I couldn't say a word to him, otherwise it would be enough for me to blow 2.1 for the rest of my life. I really want Mr. Yi to teach me how to conquer the divine beasts, but those divine beasts are too fierce. I really dare not. Although I am so docile in front of Mr. Chen, I always have a feeling that they will obliterate us in the next moment. Mr. Chen has enough mythical beasts, and now even Mewtwo is following him, which is really more popular than dead people. Some people were full of envy, and everyone around them nodded in agreement. They didn't even dare to dream about this kind of plot development. The top-notch divine beast that others have rarely seen in their entire lives actually took the initiative to find Chen, and after a few words, they followed him directly. Even if they didn't understand what Chen said, it's all a bit magical. Not to mention them, even Lance and the others were stunned. They never thought that Mewtwo would follow Chen in just a few words. Originally, they had some thoughts when they saw Mewtwo. After all, now that Giovanni has been arrested, Mewtwo can be said to have no trainer, not to mention subduing him. Even if it only gains a certain degree of favor, it is a good thing for the entire alliance. It's a pity that Mewtwo apparently didn't give them that chance. Forget it. As long as Mr. Chen wakes up, it will be better than anything. Lance sighed and turned to look around. Compared with those things, the more important thing is to restore the order of the region that has become chaotic because of this disaster. Although Fuchsia City suffered the most damage due to the appearance of the Dark Demon, almost half of the city was completely destroyed in the battle, but other regions were not much better because of the influence of haze. With millions of people and countless Pokemon homeless, for the Pokemon Alliance, this is the most urgent thing to do right now. As for Chen at this time, after leaving Fuchsia City, he rode the colorful Rayquaza towards Sinnoh region. He could feel that the penetration of the dark breath was extremely serious. Although he woke up before the disaster really broke out, it was still a little late. Before those existences really came to this world, he had to make adequate preparations. Even if his strength has increased a lot now, after 90,000 years of recuperation, those dark demon gods will probably be much stronger. This time, we must not repeat the mistakes of 90,000 years ago. Thinking of this, Chen not only lowered his head, but also looked at the faint fluorescence in his palm. This is an additional reward given to himself after the complete opening of the god ranking. The light of the beginning. Even with his knowledge, it is not clear what effect this light of the beginning has, but what is certain is that the power contained in this faint light is extremely powerful. It is precisely because of the existence of the light of the beginning that he will wake up from his deep sleep in advance. Maybe only the gods can tell me the answer. Chen pondered silently in his heart, and then raised his head as if sensing something. In front of it is a huge mountain with a height of 1,000 meters. This is an active volcano. Although it looks like a green place, people can't detect any danger, but Chen is very clear that this huge volcano will turn everything around it into nothingness at any time. Because at the bottom of it, there is a behemoth sleeping. Legends exist that can create land. Groudon. Chapter 80. It's been 90,000 years. Has this place become like this? The changes of the long years have completely changed the mountains and rivers. If he still can feel the power of the powerful law hidden in it, I am afraid that he may not be able to find it here. It's been so long. This guy won't be sleeping here forever. Chen spoke lightly, and then looked at Rayquaza under his eyes. Before falling asleep, He imprisoned the memories of all the mythical beasts that followed him, except Rayquaza. Since the latter received the least influence from Haze, he was left behind, and in addition to guarding the world, he could also take care of other divine beasts for him. After hearing his words, Rayquaza first sighed humanely, and then said, "The two guys, Groudon and Kyogre, have returned to their old ways since they were remembered by Imprison. They've woken up a few times before, but each time they fought so hard that they have to end up with me." Fight. Chen raised his eyebrows, and then showed a look of surprise. These two guys are at odds by nature. 90,000 years ago, when I saw them for the first time, I was fighting, and I was finally stopped by myself. After choosing to follow him, although there is still a little friction on weekdays, it is mostly playful, and basically they have become accustomed to each other's existence. Coupled with his existence, there was no more fighting. Unexpectedly, with the blockade of memory, as the years passed, they changed back to the past. Thinking of this, Chen's eyes couldn't help showing a touch of nostalgia. Although 90,000 years have passed, because they are all asleep, this long time is only a flash in his eyes. Just when Chen was still reminiscing about the past, behind him, Mewtwo looked at the huge mountain with a dignified look. Under the helping hand of the powerful confusion, it has already felt the difficulty of this mountain. In its depths, there is an obscure but extremely powerful aura of power. Even with its current strength, it feels extremely strong 13 pressure. A Groudon at the top of the fire rankings. From Chen's words, it has already guessed the identity of the existence below. At this time, Chen had brought Arceus, Rayquaza, Mew, and landed to the top of the mountain. Because they did not deliberately hide their aura, almost the moment they descended, the tall mountain began to tremble. The whole earth trembled. Trees swayed, boulders rolled down, and the top of the mountain began to collapse. The terrifying heat wave rose into the sky with thick smoke, and even the air was twisted and twisted. Boom! The dull sound like a drum was constantly coming from the mountain, and the Pokémon and animals within dozens of miles of Hoenn noticed the terrifying movement and fled in panic. Rayquaza obviously expected all of this, and his body immediately lit up with a colorful light, covering it, Chen, Arceus, and Mew. At the same time, a blue confusion barrier appeared on Mewtwo's body. The next moment, with a loud bang, billowing lava erupted from the collapsed peak. Countless scorched red boulders flew up to the heavenly palace, and then fell into the distance like a meteorite, exuding hot and high-temperature magma flowing freely, and everything was submerged in it. Under the wrapping of the colorful light, Chen and Rayquaza were naturally not affected at all, just quietly watching the peak. The peak is still collapsing, as if the entire mountain is collapsing, and even lava flows out from the side of the mountain. This apocalyptic scene lasted for more than 10 seconds. As earthquake continued to intensify, a huge body gradually came out of the mountain. The dark red skin is like armor, and there are many dark and strange lines on it. The red magma flowed recklessly on its surface, and finally landed on the ground below, but it was unable to affect it at all. The king of the land, the legend created the existence of the land. Groudon. Chen looked at the behemoth in front of him, and the corner of his mouth couldn't help but evoke a smile. "I haven't seen you for tens of thousands of years, and it still looks like this," he spoke softly, not knowing whether it was to himself or to Groudon in front of him. Mew on the side obviously didn't think so much. The small figure kept flickering around Chen, and the big eyes were also looking at Groudon. This guy has such a bad temper. Every time he appears, he destroys these things. Mew's voice of thoughts sounded, although it had some sense of responsibility, but there was a bit of miss and joy in its eyes. Its memory has been restored, recalling bits and pieces of the past. Chen is its partner, as are Rayquaza, Arceus, Groudon. Gathering together again after a lapse of 90,000 years naturally made it quite happy. Arceus also had a similar look. The only difference is that Rayquaza, although equally happy, but with a hint of disgust. Unlike Chen and the others, the guy in front of him has not been uncommon for 90,000 years. Every time he fights with Kyogre, he has to persuade him, which makes him worry a lot. Fortunately, Chen is back. It's time for all this farce to end. At the same time when this thought was born in its heart, in front of it, Groudon, who was standing on the billowing lava, was also looking at it with a rage color in his eyes. "It's you." Actually, with a human, a dull voice sounded. That was the voice of Groudon's mind. I saw that it looked at Chen above Rayquaza's head, and the next moment, the huge body froze in place. For some reason, It only felt that a strong sense of familiarity suddenly appeared in its heart, as if it had seen this human before. However, let it think about it, but it has never looked at it. Groudon, who couldn't think of a reason, quickly threw this thought out of his mind, and his eyes became fierce again. It wants to defend its dignity as a divine beast. Since you have disturbed my sleep, you will have to pay for it. Groudon's pupils gradually lit up with a blood-red light, and the shaking of the ground began to intensify at this moment. I saw it opened its mouth wide, and the red particles suddenly appeared out of thin air, and then gradually gathered into a huge ball of energy light in its mouth. It seems the memory of imprisoned from the beginning is still solid. Seeing that Groudon was ready to attack, Chen didn't show any panic in his eyes. He just muttered something to himself, and then looked at Arceus beside him. The latter immediately understood, nodded, and immediately took a step in the air, and 18 stone slabs were also wrapped around him at this moment. A terrifying beam of light with a diameter of more than 10 meters traversed the sky, with the terrifying power of destroying everything, and came to the front in an instant. Make atonement for your blasphemous folly. Groudon looked coldly at Arceus. It is said that the power aura on the latter is extremely powerful, and it even makes it feel a little uneasy in its heart, but even so, it is still very confident in this attack of its own. Even Rayquaza would never end well with his body to take the blow. However, this idea of it was just born and was soon broken. The seemingly terrifying red beam of light fell in front of Arceus. It was like a mud ox into the sea, and suddenly disappeared, not even making much waves, as if it was swallowed by space. How can this be? The strange change made his heart startled. Although the strike just now was far from his full strength, it is reasonable to say that he would not be blocked so easily. On top of that, it doesn't even know how the other party did it. Groudon stared at Arceus in front of him with red pupils, and his expression gradually became serious. At this time, Chen was already sitting on Rayquaza and leaned towards it. "Human, are you in taunt me?" Groudon's voice sounded again, and there was rage in the majesty. As a divine beast, the opponent's behavior has completely touched its taunt. However, Chen obviously didn't care about Groudon's rage. He just said lightly, "You've been asleep for too long, and now it's time to remember everything." "Remember everything?" Groudon's face was extremely humane with a hint of doubt, but this doubt was quickly taken over by rage. "Human, are you trying to use these despicable tricks to gain my favor? I tell you, you will eventually pay for what you do. There is no escape." A dull voice sounded in this area, and the next moment, the aura on Groudon's body suddenly began to soar, and even the surface of his body was covered with a faint red light. The original return? Chen raised his eyebrows. Knowing Groudon's character well, he didn't show too many surprises, but lightly tipped his toes, and the whole person volleyed towards the top of Groudon's head. "You want to die." Seeing that the human in front of him not only did not dodge, but also rushed towards it, Groudon suddenly became more rage, and he opened his mouth and spat out a column of red light. However, the beam of light twisted strangely before and after reaching Chen, and then disappeared into a red streamer that filled the sky. This is the power of law. Chen has the power of 18 laws in his body, and he once gave Groudon a wisp to strengthen himself with helping hand. It's not a big deal to defuse this attack now. As the dark red light beam dissipated, before Groudon could react, Chen had already fallen above its head. Reaching out with one hand, strands of light flowed out of his hand, and then moved in an incomparably complicated trajectory. Break. Groudon only felt a sudden rumbling in his mind as a cold drink came out. Severe pain surged into my heart, and there were countless fragments of extremely long-term memories that followed. It saw pictures of itself and Kyogre living in harmony for tens of thousands of years, and saw many mythical beasts. In addition, it also saw a human figure. That figure was the clearest among the fragments of memory it poured out, and at the same time it appeared most frequently, as if it had run through its entire life tens of thousands of years ago. At the same time, the familiar feeling that had been thrown away by it came back into my heart again, even stronger. Groudon continued to accept these memories, until a haze appeared in the memory that enveloped the heaven. As if the end had come, countless pictures flashed before his eyes, and after a long time, it gradually returned to its senses and turned its gaze to the human youth in front of him. "Chen, 9,000 years, you finally woke up." The dull voice sounded again. The difference was that this time there was no more rage and majesty in the voice. Some were just deep joy and nostalgia. 650. It remembered everything 90,000 years ago. knew the human being in front of him, and finally chose to follow, fight with him, and travel the world. With the recovery of memory, the past scenes became extremely clear in his mind. It knows the cause and effect of everything. At this time, looking at his appearance, Chen's mouth also evoked a smile. I said, I will definitely be back. 90,000 years have passed, and you still haven't changed at all. Chen looked at the red glow on Groudon's body with a teasing look. The latter reacted quickly, and quickly took back the momentum around him. It remembers tens of thousands of years, but it doesn't forget what just happened. As soon as he woke up from his deep sleep, he launched an attack on Arceus. Not only that, but also to fight Chen, and even the original return. At this point it just felt annoyed. Could it be because of someone for too long? How did you become so stupid? Even if the memory is captured by imprison, can I beat it and still have no points in my heart? That, I declare, everything that just happened was an accident. Agree? Well, everyone agrees. Then from now on, this matter is not allowed to be mentioned again. Groudon said a lot in one breath, then turned to look at Tiangong, as if he was out of the way. Chen smiled helplessly and shook his head, but his eyes were full of relief. Obviously, the 90,000-year separation has not changed Groudon. Even the character is exactly the same as before. This is of course worthy of his joy. For everything that happened before, because Groudon's memory had not awakened, he naturally wouldn't take it to heart, but it was clear that colorful Rayquaza didn't think so. I saw it looked Groudon up and down, and then evoked a sneer in a rather humane way. Agree? I've persuaded you for 90,000 years, and you'll be P*************** D to death. Do you think I'll agree? Don't worry, I will tell Kyogre exactly what happened just now. Just wait and see what it looks like. Rayquaza's remarks clearly hit Groudon's pain point, who immediately turned his head and stared at Rayquaza. After seeing that the latter didn't eat this set, it looked at Chen again. Chen, did you hear that? It's actually trying to provoke my relationship with Kyogre. What's my relationship with Kyogre? That's... Looking at Groudon, who was defending himself in front of him, Chen couldn't help but evoke a smile again, ignored it, landed on Arceus, and started flying towards the next spot.
Thanks for watching. You can find the next videos in the playlist linked in the info card, directly on my channel, or right here on the screen. And as always, if you have any feedback, feel free to share it in the comments too.